We have representatives from the Department of Transportation,
150,000.
our
Where are these people been
Director of
all this
Public
time?
Works,
It's a lot
Mr.
of money.
Nunes, and Mr.
John
Gabibbo. Yes, Mr. Gabibbo.
Another issue I'm going to raise, I think.
Gentlemen, you have the floor.
Looks like the street in front of my house.
Hold on.
The microphone's on for some reason.
Hi, Counselor. All right, good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Donald, Director of Public Works, and again, we have John Cabibbo, Assistant Town Engineer, and Mark Burns from Condon. And we're here tonight. Mark will get into some more details on why Mark is here and why we need the resolution that was placed in on tonight's agenda, the cover letter and that, and Mark will get into that in further detail. On the screen is the proposed improvements that we are planning on doing for the South River Street Bridge.
Donald, is your microphone?
Yeah. Can you hear me? So on the screen is the proposed improvements with the red lines right here where the hand is moving now is the existing right-of-way and the property lines that we have. So again, we'll get into it with Mark, and I'll pass it over.
Thank you, Don. All right. There was a public hearing on April 17th to discuss this project and Project 48190, which is the multi-use path project. At the hearing, several people spoke out, mostly against the proposed property acquisition. And following that meeting, it was determined that in order to move forward, we need the town council to adopt a resolution to move with the acquisition of the property. Because this is a town-run project and the town is going to be the administrator and owner of it, the DOT is here just to provide administrative oversight to ensure that all federal procedures are being followed and all state procedures are being followed. So ultimately, the decision is with the town on how to move forward, whether or not to go with the proposed improvements or to not acquire the property and scale back the overall design. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So,
It's heavy.
I know, it's heavy. So with that, again, there was a lot of questions that the council had, so we can open up the floor to questions and answers, or however you wish to proceed, but we're here. Yes, Councilor.
So, Councilor Crisati, then Councilor Sferrazza.
You know, Mr. Mayor, first, and I apologize, Mr. Crisati, why don't you, I know there's a picture, why don't you just briefly tell us what the project is? What is the proposal? What is it for? Just so people at home understand the context.
Okay. The orange that you see in the picture is going to be the proposed bridge with a 6-foot wide sidewalk overhanging closer to the Connecticut River side of Freshwater Brook. There'll be two 10-foot lanes with two 2-foot shoulders. There'll also be minor drainage improvements adjacent to the boat launch. And the sidewalk will be installed in conjunction with the trail project. Also in the gray is the proposed roadway, because as you can see by the red line below, part of your road is actually an Amtrak right-of-way. So in an effort to avoid conflict with Amtrak, we propose to move the road off Amtrak right-of-way, which will result in property acquisitions.
And just again, to be rudimentary, this is the South River Street Bridge. And as the council understands, this is one where the DOT had come in last year and told us that it wasn't up to standards, so we closed it to do temporary repairs. The council found the financing for it to get us to be able to reopen it, knowing that these monies were in place to replace the bridge coming next year. And during the course of this project, when I discovered there was a taking that was going to be involved, I informed the landowner so that he would have adequate time to look at this and not be surprised, and also be able to talk to Public Works and to look at the project in its entirety. Lori is here too, Lori Witten, because it also not only impacts the bridge itself, but again, we're talking about the Connecticut River Access Project, and also to some degree the access to the potential and future train station where we're going to be hopefully soon acquiring the Eversource property. So there's a lot of different things in the mix.
Anything else for open questions? Councilor Crisati, then Councilor Sferrazza.
Okay. At the public hearing, there were, residents and people that made comments about, not so much that they were against the concept, all right, but, with the property going through. And one of the questions that they asked was, why does the bridge have to be 24 feet wide? And the sidewalks 6 feet wide, okay? They were saying, could that, on that particular side, could that be narrowed, okay? So what's the rationale? And I just think that would like to hear it, the rationale for the width of the bridge.
Okay, the 24 feet is, we use that number because that's the minimum town standard for two-way traffic on a local road. So that was why the road would be 24 feet wide. The sidewalk, the width of 6 feet was actually reduced because the pathway for the Connecticut River access is actually 10 feet wide, and we reduced it to 6 on that design because of space constraints there, not just with the property on the corner, but with the other house at 2 South River Street. So those are the reasons for those dimensionings on the design.
But the width of the sidewalk is, I heard that you have to have 2 wheelchairs to be able to fit on that particular on a sidewalk. Is that correct?
The ADA standards require 5 feet, but it's recommended that 6 feet because a wheelchair, they measure a wheelchair as 3 feet wide. So if theoretically 2 wheelchairs were passing at the same time, 6 feet would be needed.
Okay, that just needed to be clarified, because I don't think, that was stated at the public hearing. Okay, the reasons why that the bridge has to be X amount of feet wide, with the sidewalk being X amount of feet wide also. And could you also touch a little upon, or a lot upon, the design of why the road couldn't be coming out to, where the Amtrak right-of-way is? All right, because, one of the things that was mentioned at the public hearing was, a redesign.
Okay. If you see the 2 red lines that Don is pointing out to, right-of-way lines, so that's where the town property ends. So from the end of the Amtrak property to the property at the corner of Main and South River is 12 feet 2 inches wide. That's barely enough for 1 lane with a shoulder. So to meet the town's standards of a 24-foot wide roadway, we need to realign the road and widen out adjacent to, by acquiring private property, because we will not seek property acquisition from Amtrak.
Okay, I just wanted, I myself know, but I just wanted clarification so that people can thoroughly understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council Sferrazza.
Donald, I have a question. When this bridge was inspected, was it last year? I understand DOT uses a scale of 1 to 10. And what did this bridge come in at?
At the time when it was, what date was that? Yeah, it was in May. It's on a 1, I think it's a 1 to 9. It's a 1 to 9 scale. This came in as a 2.
So 9 being the best?
9 being a
and
brand
1
new
is
bridge,
it fell.
and 1 being impending failure.
So this would be critical?
It was critical, yes.
Okay.
And after the repairs were done, which council authorized, it went from a 2 to a 4. These interim measures were there just to get this bridge over for a couple more years, just to get it limped through. So
Right.
when the
These
full
interim
replacement-
measures didn't substitute for the fact it still needs to be addressed.
Right, there's more to it. What we wanted to do in the meantime was get the bridge open as fast as we can and get it passable and get it up again from a 2 to a 4 so we can utilize it.
So the price or the cost of this entire project is how much?
It was
We're carrying 3.3 million.
3.3
Fully
million.
voted construction and inspection.
$3.3 million, which 80% will be covered by the state?
The 80% share is through the federal highway, through the off-system bridge program, so it's all federal funds, no state dollars.
Okay. So am I correct if I say if we go forward with this, we'll pay 20% and get the bridge repaired to a 10? If we don't go forward with it, impending collapse could come in a year or 2 or 3, federal funds wouldn't be available and we'd have to fund the whole thing.
Federal funds would still be available as long as any deficiencies are being addressed. We would still fund it if this project was canceled tomorrow, we walked away and 2 years from now, the town decides to go through a project, it would still be funded for repairs.
Okay, thank you.
All set, Carl? Councilman Bosco, then Councilor Denny.
Well, just made it tougher. So, can this plan be modified to a point where it will address all our issues and still keep that house? And what would be the outcome, and how much time would that add to it? To, you know, because we do know we need to get that bridge taken care of.
So even though the town standard is 24 foot wide, we use our federal coding guide based on average daily traffic, what the minimum standard width is for a bridge to not be considered functionally obsolete. The designer, GM2, did a traffic count and determined the vehicle count was roughly 375 vehicles per day. Per our coding guide, for an ADT of under 400 cars per day, we could go with a 20-foot wide width. This, however, we could put this in if the town so chose. This would be going against your own standard, but it would be fundable because it would be the minimum bridge width that would be acceptable to the department. In addition, if the town did not want to go forward with acquisition of the property, we would scale down the improvements on both approaches of the bridge to merely be, trying to look at a scale, maybe 25 to 50 feet on each side while staying within the town right away. This would address the deficient bridge, and we would be walk away and be done, and the bridge would no longer be structurally deficient. However, we would not complete a sidewalk going towards Main Street because we would not proceed with the property acquisition. The trail project would terminate at the boat launch, and that still does not address the fact that you have a town road on Amtrak right of way.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Denny, then Deputy Mayor Suzak.
One of the things that was brought up before is why all of a sudden, I guess I'm 74 years old, so it's 74 years or longer that the road has been on Amtrak property, and now all of a sudden we have to move it. I want you to answer that question because I think the people who live there are asking that question. Okay.
No problem. It's never been an issue because there's never been a project related to the right-of-way, so no one, I don't think, has ever really looked into this issue. It's also never been an issue because Amtrak has never requested that the town move the road, which is within their right. You could get a call tomorrow from Amtrak to tell you to vacate your road off their property, as is their right as they own the property. It just hasn't come up until we've started looking into this project, into the potential future train station, the trail project. That's why it's coming up now.
Thank you.
To further that, Counselor, a real-world example, again, is Town Farm Road on the far easterly end where it meets Broadbrook Road. We've been using, there was a 90-degree turnoff where as you're traveling down Town Farm Road, you can either go straight ahead at that really weird angle where you're looking back down Broadbrook, or you can go around the corner. That little sliver has been on Shimura's and the Shimura and Tokar's property for, I think it was like 50, 60 years. But now that we're redoing the road, we have to do a land acquisition there, and we pay them for that land so we can put the road, because we've been using it and it's been on their property, so we had to move it.
Mr. Mayor, I can give a better example. We've been dealing with Amtrak for probably, since the fall. We're doing the water pollution control project for the upgrade, and we need to go slightly into Amtrak's right-of-way to put a earthen berm because DEP is requiring it in case there's a 100-year flood. We've had congressmen, U.S. senators assisting us in this endeavor. Amtrak out of Pennsylvania, with their legion of lawyers and their risk managers, has made it almost impossible for us to get permission to do it. They've required licensing agreements. They're requiring insurance of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be kept in perpetuity to have some dirt in their right-of-way. If Amtrak finds out about this, watch out. So I don't recommend, if you were ever going to change the design and go forward, I would say you'd have to empower Public Works and DOT to contact Amtrak and tell them, because to get halfway through this and have them come in and say, now, you've got to move it, and, the funding isn't in place, you've got to, now you're committed to a reconstruction that doesn't encompass Amtrak with us being on their property, and we've got to do the acquisition and all the rest of it instead of the state and the federal government. But I can assure you, in my experience dealing with them, it's almost impossible, and that's the experience of the DOT as well with Amtrak. They're a federal entity unto themselves. They're untouchable. They're very difficult. I don't want to poison the well because we're trying to deal with them on this other project, but it's weeks after weeks, months after months, and that's to put some dirt in their right-of-way. And they don't want to allow us to do it, except under extraordinary conditions. So, I mean, as you had said, maybe this has been there for 100 years and they really weren't aware of it. But once now you go into when they find out you're going to do a project, I think a betting man would say they're going to make you move the road once they know about this.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I guess for me, I'm trying to put this in perspective. John, is this design similar to when we did the Powder Hollow Bridge? Okay.
It is in some ways. Powder Hollow was a single lane, one way at a time bridge, and there was a lot of resistance to making that two ways. But for safety wise, it really isn't.
It's much safer now than it was
Exactly.
before. And also the other project was the realignment of South Road to Elm Street. That was a state project.
Correct.
That required the acquisition of a home and a tennis court. So these are similar projects to other parts of town that we kind of weren't too happy, but there was a big improvement to each location when they finally completed.
Councilor Sakala, then Councilor Bosco.
So, I guess I need it in a bow. I need to tie it up. So, I think ideally would love to have this project done and not take that house. So what I'm hearing from you is, one, the project has to be done. We have to fix it, right? And two, there's no way to fix it and do everything that we need to do in order to complete the project, make sure we're not on Amtrak property, and do all of the improvements that we need to, and keep that house where it is and not take it. Is that what I'm getting? You can't do both. It's one or the other. Yes or no?
Councilor, if we want to get off the Amtrak property, there's no way we can do it without it.
Okay, so that's a no. Thanks.
All set. Councilor Bosco.
I guess that was my question. I don't want to take a house. I don't want to take anyone's property. I'm dead set against it, but if there's no other way to do this project, if it meant making it smaller to save the house, using a narrower bridge, I would be for that. But we have to get it off Amtrak property, and there is no other way of doing it, getting it off their property without taking it. That's the final say, correct?
To get the road off of Amtrak and to keep a two-lane road, that would be,
What about if we put a one lane?
it wouldn't be fundable under the program. That would be on the town's own expense at a later date. If we didn't want to acquire the house and didn't want to go off Amtrak, we would replace the bridge, go to the approaches, and leave. And then that still leaves the door open for Amtrak to tell you to move the road. You have 12 feet, 2 inches of right-of-way. You would have a one-lane road going up to the bridge.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? So my basic question, and I think it's tough. My belief in government is certainly eminent domain isn't one of them. So the question is, we start work, and I completely understand your explanation. So there's houses up and down that street. Does that open it up for a property down the end of the street if it's in? So I guess if one project in one part of the street, does that open it up for any? To your point, where we're dealing with at the water pollution control plant. What if there's a part of the streets in a right of way now? I guess that can happen, but I'm just curious. does that open up for other discussions where now we have a problem down the other end of the street? Or North River Street? Yeah. I know, I got it, right?
I mean, that if Amtrak starts looking and starts going through property records, there's nothing stopping them from doing their due diligence and making sure there's not private property or town-owned facilities on their property.
Right.
But this is a unique situation from the way the road is curved.
Right.
And it also, just to further point, it also seems the majority of the houses are on the opposite side of the road. So the odds of them being on Amtrak property are more minimal.
And appreciate the answer. And just one last, what is the definition of fair market value?
I can't speak to that because I don't work in the Office of Rights of Way, but they will, if through the process, the property owner will be given, it'll be an appraisal. They'll be given an offer. If they feel the offer is unfair, they can continue to fight it through the legal system, and the offer can be adjusted.
Got it. Thank you.
Can I just follow up? Because, again, I think Joey and I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but nobody wants to take this property if we can do it without it. So, Chris, what you said was you don't think that it's really a viable option or possible to ask Amtrak for permission to keep that road on their property. You think that would take way too long to get some sort of answer?
Well, we're trying to do
from them?
this simple negotiation with them, and we've been doing it for probably 6 or 7, 8 months, and we have no resolution, so I really can't speculate on what. That's a lot. There's no impact to them at all. I mean, it's dirt in the woods. I don't know how they would feel about a road this close to the tracks. I really can't say.
Then let me ask you this. Would it impact the timeline of starting a project if we wanted to go and ask Amtrak for permission to keep the road on their property? Would we not be able to go forward at all with any more phases of this project until we get that answer?
In order to have your property, you'd have to go through the Surface Transportation Board, which is, I believe, is a congressional board.
Mm-hmm.
That could take years, and I don't think anyone wants to spend more town dollars. So the designer will stop because they won't know how further they want to go, because you don't want to send them down a path and then they have to spend more money redesigning it if Amtrak says no. So if you wanted to go down that path, this project would come to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
The other is, and as I've indicated, and Lori's here, even if you were to do all that and get permission and change it, you are then going to, and maybe you can ask her the questions, you're going to terminate these other projects that are, in the
right.
works.
The bike path.
So those will be disrupted, and also representations have been made to DOT in regard to the train station and cleaning up this intersection in order to access that. So I can't say, what the jeopardy or ramifications will be to those other projects, but it could very well terminate those as well.
Right. I didn't think about that, and you had mentioned it. All right. I mean, it's not a good answer, but
Anything else?
no.
Gentlemen, anything else in closing?
I'm good.
No, I just want to say in my experience, I appreciate the fact that you've come up here. I think the DOT generally is very reasonable. What I mean by that is I know it's not your intent to take someone's home.
No, not at
So
all.
again, I think, I know you were up here a week or so ago, so we appreciate you coming back, and speaking before the town council.
I only want to add, I too share the reticence of the council to take anybody's property. You certainly wouldn't do it lightly. You wouldn't do it if there were any other reasonable alternatives. But again, there's the old saying, a bird in hand. This has been on the drawing boards. The funding is in place. And while our colleague from the DOT is confident, in a couple of years, the funding will be there, I wouldn't count on any funding from the state or federal government being there once you say no to a project and they pull it. You're on the back burner. And our problem is that the repairs that were made to bring this bridge from critical from 2 to 4 were short term. You jeopardize this and push it down the road a couple of years, the bridge drops down below to critical. All of those people who were coming to you and upset that the bridge was closed and they couldn't get deliveries and medicine and oil will be back here. And then you're going to have to come up with those several $100,000 to just do a repair that's a Band-Aid, basically flushing that money down the brook again to get to a project that may never come to fruition. It's the best of probably bad alternatives. But all I can say is a lot of these other projects that are working in concert with this are also going to be jeopardized. So I understand, and I feel badly for the landowner, and that's why I alerted to him this a year ago so we could make plans. There's no good alternative here, but I just think you got to look for the greater good. And I think the council's doing due diligence in good faith. Everyone can see that they're not enamored with this, nor am I. And I thank Public Works and DOT for coming and making themselves available so that everybody knows and we put our cards on the table.
All set. One more question, we got to move.
I just wish I knew a year ago. So just, this is when I found out about it, was at that last meeting. And I wish I knew a year ago, but, I mean, it puts us in a bad spot, but we don't really have much of a choice.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
What's the Board of Ed? Huh? They're talking about school. Oh.
That's the special ed school.
Oh.
They just want to
Update everybody on
update
it.
it, yeah.
Well, good evening, Town Council, Mayor, Mr. Manager. Tonight, we're very excited to give you a presentation of a very exciting initiative the school department is looking at. If you saw the...
So, sorry, welcome. Name and
Welcome.
title, and you got the floor. Go right ahead.
Okay.
Sorry
Mr.
about that.
Andy Longi, Assistant Superintendent. Mr. Drezek is at another meeting, but he'll be joining us shortly. I'm going to turn this over very quickly to the team that put this proposal together. If you saw the school board video or at the school board meeting, you may have seen this presentation. They're going to give you a presentation of a very exciting initiative about bringing many of our students back to Enfield in what we call a day school. And they're going to explain that much better than I can, but they'll give you a presentation. I think they have to set up their computer real quick. So just give us a second,
Sure.
We'll set it up, and then we'll get started.
Okay, great.
Okay?
And while we're waiting, I can just share with the council and for the folks at home that this is something we've been working on for several months, an initiative of the superintendent, which I think is beneficial to the residents, but particularly those students affected by these programs. And I will tell you, again, this too will not be without some, probably agita, some disruption, some bumps in the road. But I think if you have to have vision, there are some risks if you're going to look forward to great reward. I think the rewards for this program are rich, and the pale in comparison, but just be prepared as well for those people affected and some individuals, because we're moving buildings and programs and human beings that we're probably going to have some growing pains as we seek to implement this. But this is the broad strokes, and these are the experts who are working very, very hard on the program. After having listened to them informally and talked to the superintendent, I am very, very confident and optimistic that this is a great program for the town of Enfield and for all of our students and residents. So without delay, I turn over to the experts.
So,
All right.
welcome, and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Julie Carroll, Director of Pupil Services. Tonight, the administrative goal team and I would like to provide you with an overview of an exciting new initiative we've been working on this school year, the development of the Eagle Academy, an academic and therapeutic school. Over the past several years, like many school systems across the country, we've experienced an increase in the number of students who are struggling with social, emotional, and behavioral needs. In response to our students' needs, we've implemented a wide range of interventions and supports that we're pleased to say have been very effective. But yet, we still have a small percentage of students who require more intensive programming in a separate, small school setting. There are some school systems in Connecticut that have developed their own separate, small academic and therapeutic schools within their own school districts. But currently, in Enfield, we don't have this option for our students. So when our students need this level of programming and intervention, with our planning and placement team members, we consider placement in separate schools outside of Enfield. We call those our outplacements. In cities and towns such as, and I'll just name a few, Hartford, East Hartford, New Britain, Manchester, and others. As you can imagine, when we make these decisions with our planning and placement team members, our students' lives and schedules are greatly impacted. Children often need to rise early in the morning. Sometimes they have a bus ride to school that can last an hour to an hour and a half each way. And sometimes they arrive home from school quite late in the afternoon, so they often miss out on after-school activities and sports within the Enfield community. In addition, as you can imagine, for a student who struggles to regulate their emotions and their behavior, these bus rides can be very challenging for the children. So for all of these reasons, we believe that we need to bring our students home to Enfield to provide a small, separate, therapeutic school to meet their needs, where these children can learn, grow, thrive, and be a part of their home community. So at the beginning of our school year, we formed an administrative goal team. When we were thinking about who we wanted to include on the goal team, we were very intentional in our selections. We wanted to have representatives from special education as well as general education who represent and have experience across all grade levels. So at this point, I'd like to introduce to you the members of our Eagle Academy goal team. Bridget Burchell, Lori Siegel, Nancy Hayes, Sandra Ingalls, Aaron Clark, Jim Graham, Laura Gagnon, Marilyn Crisati, Lauren Andrews, Brian Olson, and even though she's not here with us tonight, I would like to acknowledge and thank attorney Christine Cheney, who we've worked with throughout our goal team work. We've consulted her, and she's been a great help to us. At the beginning of the year, as a goal team, we met and we crafted a goal statement to really capture the focus of our work. Our goal statement reads as follows: to explore the development of a specialized learning center that will create opportunities for students to succeed through individualized instruction, intensive supports, and a network of care within the Enfield community. So again, the question is, why are we doing this? Our overarching goal is to bring our students home to Enfield and provide quality educational programming to meet their needs and to ensure that they have those very rich childhood experiences that we want all our kids to have in the community. The participation in extracurricular activities and the rich selection of sporting activities that Enfield has to offer its youth. As a goal team, we met and we reviewed the facts. We know that we currently have students with social, emotional, and behavioral needs who need specialized programming and who currently attend special education therapeutic schools outside of the Enfield community. As I mentioned earlier, these children often have long bus rides and very limited time after school for community-based activities. We really believe that it's in the best interest of the children, their families, and our community to provide programming for them here in Enfield. Also, we reviewed the needs of our students very carefully, and we toured many special education, academic, and therapeutic schools across the state of Connecticut. At these schools, we interviewed administrators, we spoke with teachers, we observed in classes, and then we met back in Enfield. We debriefed on all of our site visits. In our discussions, we identified various program strengths as well as practices we observed that we might want to do differently for our students in Enfield. In our discussions, we quickly recognize that we have the resources and we certainly have the commitment to create an excellent special education, academic, and therapeutic school for our students in district. And also, with everything that's happening across the state at this time, we recognize that there may be an exciting opportunity for Enfield to become a leader in the regionalization of school services. We could partner with our neighboring school districts to offer opportunities for their students to receive high-quality educational programming closer to their own home communities as well. But again, our overarching goal is Enfield students first. We want to bring our students home so they can attend school in their home community. Next, I'd like to review a graphic with you. This diagram is a broad continuum of placements that illustrates how we can meet the needs of all students. So if we look at the diagram, on the left-hand side, it states least restrictive. If you look all the way over to the right-hand side, it states most restrictive. Along this continuum, the starting point for all students are the general education classes. For students who require more support, we consider the use of accommodations and modifications. For students who have disabilities and require specialized instruction, we can meet their needs by providing this instruction in the general education classroom or in our resource room classes, or a combination of both. And again, those decisions for placement are always made by our planning and placement teams, which include our families. For some students who require more intensive instruction, more support, and a small group setting, we have our separate specialized classes, and you'll see that we're moving along the right towards a more restrictive placement here. But I want to point out that the children who are placed in our specialized separate classes by our planning and placement teams still have opportunities for inclusion in general education settings in the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high schools here in town. So we have this option for our students in Enfield, again, at the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level. But if you look at the diagram to the right, you'll see the X, and just above it, the classification of separate schools. So separate schools are recommended for children who really need to have specialized programming in a smaller school setting with more intensive services, more intensive supports, and the focus is really on the relationships, right? That's the foundation of the learning. A smaller school setting that allows children to have close relationships, students to students, and students with staff. Currently, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have this option available for our students in Enfield. So when a child needs this level of programming, our planning and placement team members consider outplacement in some of the towns that I mentioned earlier. So we're hoping with the creation and implementation of our Eagle Academy, we'll be able to better serve these children in their home community, and we'll be able to fill the void on our continuum. For children who have medical needs and appropriate documentation, we can provide home-based instruction. And then the most restrictive placement you'll see identified is, for example, when an outside agency perhaps places a child in a hospital or residential setting. So that is a broad continuum of placements for children. This kind of represents how we meet the needs of all students in our school system. We believe that by creating our Eagle Academy, we'll be able to bring our students home and provide excellent educational and therapeutic programming for them in Enfield.
Okay, so this evening I get to talk about what we have in place now for our students who require social and emotional supports. And when we gave this presentation to the Board of Ed, I told them, and I'm going to tell you the same thing, the supports that we have in place right now, we should all be proud of here in Enfield. If you look down this list, you can see that positive behavior interventions and supports is a program that we have in all of our elementary schools. It's a multi-year rollout program. We're in year 2. And there are coaches associated with each of those schools. We've created our transition classrooms at the primary schools to help students who again, require a higher level of social and emotional support to get through their day and to be successful at school. We have tiered interventions that are very similar at the middle school and at the high school. We have full-time counselors in all of our schools, which is not the case in every town. Again, social work services are available at all levels. Not the case in every town. We have special education and related services for identified students at all levels. And we also have special classes at the elementary, middle, and high schools for identified students who require those additional supports. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what those supports look like in the general ed classroom, and then what some of those supports would look like in a couple of the specialized programs that we have, those specialized classrooms. And if you look along the continuum, that first stop along the way for students who need a little bit more support than what we have in the general ed curriculum are the services associated with students who have IEPs. So they would receive specialized instruction in the area of the general education classroom, in addition to working with specialized instruction potentially in resource room situations. So it's very individualized. Some students would receive a lot of support in the classroom with minimum support in a resource room, and other students, it's all along what they need. Some students would maybe require a little bit more outside. We work on accommodations so that they can be successful, modifications, behavior intervention plans. We have related services such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language, among others. And depending on the need of the student, very often our special ed teachers and our regular ed teachers work together in a co-teaching model. And then, of course, there are secondary transition services. So these are, that first level of supports as needed. The next level of support, if you look along the continuum, right before we get to the break that Julie talked about, that we currently have here in town, are those separate classes. At Barnard, we have 3 of them. One of them is dedicated for students who need some additional social and emotional supports. That's called the Educational Counseling Program, or ECP. And you'll hear a little bit more about that later on. The secondary or successful outcomes for achievement and responsibility, or SOAR program, is at the secondary level, and it matches very similarly. So in both programs, there is specialized instruction, again, related services as needed, accommodations, modifications, behavior intervention plans. The big one in these special classrooms is that additional adult support. Small group setting for students with social, emotional, and behavioral needs. That relationship piece and the small numbers is really key to helping them become successful. The ability to access general education classrooms, that's another advantage for students who are able to tolerate being in a general education classroom for part of the day. And BCBA consultation, so Board Certified Behavior Analyst consultation. Okay, so there we go. Okay. We'll have to pull your way in. Okay.
Do a switch. I don't think it's going to reach.
Yeah, we can switch.
I just want to check the level because I talk a little loud, so I just gotta.
It's all right.
I scare a lot
Louder
of
the
people with my
better.
voice.
Louder the better.
Okay. So my name is Brian Olson. I'm currently a teacher at Henry Barner School in the ECP program, K through 2. So within my classroom, I'm providing specialized instruction for students with social and emotional needs in a smaller group setting. And even though we provide many resources that Mr. Graham here mentioned within my program, we're still in a traditional school setting. So, our school is very large, it's very busy, and, I go on and on about some, examples of, we're just not able to provide a lot of specialized support and services that some students need to access. So in referring to that curriculum, sometimes I have to make the tough choice of recommended outplacement for some of my students. So having this Eagle Academy here in town will keep these students within our district and our community, and I think that's very huge, and I think that's very important. And, having a school of this nature is going to help these students tremendously and be able to return them back to their home schools within our district. So if we refer to the next slide. So really what's going to make this school different, say, than my program, if you refer on the right side of the slide, we had the social and emotional framework, needs for students. And if you kind of look at the center there for social emotional learning, there's 5 key components that students really need to develop in order to access the curriculum, the school, the families, and communities. So that's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So that's why we're looking to have a specialized and collaborative educational team. So we're looking to hire special education teachers and behavior technicians, people whose sole focus is their dedication of working with students with social and emotional learning. And it's very important that this educational team all speaks the same lingo. We're all trained in the best practices of working with these students and knowing what they need. And, I've worked collaboratively with all the people here, and, we're all on the same page on what these students need, and I think that's very important. So we're going to have a small school setting emphasizing relationships with all students and individualized instruction aligned with the district's curriculum standards. And having a small school, all staff is going to know all students, and and all teachers are going to be able to work with students at all levels. All the support staff is going to be able to work with all students at all levels, and definitely build that relationships with the students and the families, which is very important. We'll still provide that comprehensive board-certified behavior analyst, licensed clinical social worker, psychological, OT, speech, PT services for students that need those services, and also have opportunities for extended school year. We'll have behavior technicians with specialized training and working with students with social emotional needs. We'll have responsive learning environments, so for the purpose of sensory integration strategies for students. So within the school, not only classrooms, but separate settings for students to help them out, students with sensory needs, and I think that's very important. That's something that, I can't provide within the school I teach right now. And, I think the main thing is opportunities for participation for students in the Enfield community. I'm also a former high school teacher and coach, so I'm real big into the extracurricular activities, the sports and activities that we can provide students. And, students being within the school system here and having a short, virtually have the same bus ride that they would if they're in town. They're going to be able to access sports. They're going to be able to access activities within the school, and just keeping them part of the community and make them feel just that this is their place where we want them and where they need to be to succeed. So, moving on. Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, welcome.
So, as we said, one of the most important pieces of this school is that it is a small school setting that is entirely focused on meeting the needs, the unique needs of our students, both academically and social emotionally. As we know from experience, and as we've seen in other schools that are successful, schools that do so in a smaller setting with a collaborative staff are more successful for the students, both short-term and long-term. We will have both elementary and secondary classes with, as Brian said, flexible grouping based on the student needs. Our goal is for that all the staff will know all of the students, so that everybody understands what the students need, and they can all work flexibly together. Special education teachers that have experience working with students with similar backgrounds. Behavior technicians that are specifically trained by our BCBA to support students' social, emotional, and behavioral needs. They'll also work with the special education teachers to support the academic piece as well. Again, as we said, a licensed clinical social worker, as well as consultative BCBA and psychiatric services as needed. Related services, OT, PT, speech and physical therapy. And as a staff, as we said, we'll all focus on knowing the whole child and supporting their needs in any way possible. We're really excited about the work that we've done this year so far. We believe Eagle Academy will provide numerous benefits for both our students and for Enfield as a whole. Provide quality educational programming with, again, opportunities for extended school year. With the focus on creating meaningful relationships with our students and their families, all of our staff, teachers, behavior technicians, mental health professionals, related service providers, as well as administrators, will work collaboratively together with all of the students and their families. The building has been thoughtfully planned to include spaces for students of all ages, both indoors and outdoors. We'll have a chance for Enfield to be a leader in the regionalization of school services by partnering with local districts. Our location is ideal for this. I think as we all know and can agree, Enfield is an amazing community, and we have so many activities for our kids and their families, both during the school day and after. Unfortunately, a portion of our students do not get to participate in these. By bringing our students home to Enfield, we will offer them invaluable opportunities to participate in community activities with their peers and help to foster these positive relationships that are so important for them to continue in the future. Most importantly, going back to our why, we know we have the resources and the commitment to give our kids what they need here in Enfield.
All set? All set? Thank you very much. Any questions? Counselor Ungary?
Hi, thank you for coming. A projected number of how many students you think you'll accommodate?
So right now, we are holding our planning and placement team meeting, so it's premature to say for certain how many students we'll start the year with. In terms of capacity, in looking at the available space, we're anticipating 4 classes up to 8 students in each class, and that would be our projected capacity. Not right away at the beginning of the year, but somewhere down the road, perhaps. Mm-hmm.
Counselor Kinder, then Counselor Sferrazza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I taught in the Enfield school system for 35 years, and many of those names on the team look very familiar to me. And I've got to say, you guys put together an absolutely outstanding team, and I was supportive of this endeavor when we first heard about it. I'm even more supportive now. Just the one question that I have, obviously there's a great difference in sum of money to educate a special ed kid in school as opposed to outsourcing, or not outsourcing, but sending the kid to another facility. Are there specific metrics that go into determining when you cannot educate that child, that student, in a setting in the school, and at that point you just have to outplace them to another facility?
Yes, as I mentioned in the presentation, those decisions are made by members of our planning and placement teams. So a planning and placement team is composed of the child's parents or guardians, a school administrator, special ed teacher, general education teacher, and any related service providers, as well as other attendees on a case-by-case basis. And when our planning and placement teams make recommendation for outplacement, there are a variety of sources of information that they review and consider. For example, psychoeducational evaluations, speech and language evaluations, OT evaluations. We also look at a child's progress in terms of meeting their IEP goals and objectives, as well as information from any additional assessments which we might have completed, including neuropsychological evaluations or psychiatric consultation reports. We also are happy to review and consider any information that the family members bring forward to the PPT as well. So it's a variety of sources that we consider.
Just one more follow-up question. What happens if a parent rejects your recommendation that the child be placed somewhere else? What recourse occurs then?
Well, I think the key is having established very positive and collaborative relationships with our families, working very closely with our families over a period of time, and meeting with them before the actual PPT meeting, and reviewing the data, and talking about the reports, and having the families understand that the child's the number one priority. And I'm happy to say that, more often than not, we are able to reach collaborative and positive outcomes for our students.
So, with all the students that have been placed out of the traditional school setting, you never had a parent stop you from doing this?
I personally have not encountered that. We've always been able to access some type of recourse, whether it's a follow-up meeting or a special session with the family and their representatives. We've always been able to work through our differences to best meet the needs of our children.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Sferrazza.
Thank you. That was a great presentation, outstanding program. But I just have a couple of questions. How many students currently are we sending out to other towns? Do you know?
I have an approximate number. So, and keep in mind, too, that tonight we were discussing children who have social, emotional, and behavioral needs. There are a variety of special needs that our children have. So in total, outplacements, it's approximately 45. And that number can fluctuate day to day or week to week, depending on how these cases are evolving. So,
Okay.
yep.
And I'm pretty sure I'm correct that the town is responsible for paying these other communities, Manchester, New Britain, to take our students. What's an approximate cost? What does it cost us when we have to send one of our children to another town?
So when we outplace a student, we pay tuition to it's usually a private facility, okay? And the tuition rates vary. They vary according to the services that are outlined on the child's individualized education program document. So it can vary. There's quite a range.
Do you have a ballpark? I mean, are we talking, I'm just curious.
Sure. Yeah. Anywhere from $60,000 a year per student to as much as $200,000 or more per year per student, depending on the child's needs.
So depending on the needs, it could be anywhere between $60,000 to $200,000, and we have 45 currently that are in this program.
That's an approximate number of students who are outplaced, yes.
So then would it be logical conclusion to say that once this program is up and running and we're not sending these children to other towns, the cost of running this program could be somewhat mitigated by the savings of not having to pay out-of-town tuition? Is that correct?
I think that's feasible, yes.
And my last question is, would we at some point be looking to open this up to charge other communities that don't have this and they'd like to send their students here? Could we do that?
Yes, we've discussed that is a possibility. So initially, our school, we're envisioning it to be small to start.
Right.
We want to ensure that our recommendations for placement are thoughtful and appropriate and best meet the needs of the children. And having said that, once we're up and running and we're experiencing the successes that we anticipate, if we have room to accept a child from a neighboring district, then we could consider that, certainly.
For a fee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Denny.
Well, with 45 students in the program, one of my concerns is I'm looking into the future while you're speaking, and I'm in favor of this. I think it's a great idea. We're going to start out with approximately 7 students. We're going to use the Early Learning Center, correct? Is that the facility that we're going to be using?
The Early Learning Center, that hasn't been.
Head Start, I'm sorry,
Oh,
excuse
yes.
me. It's Head Start building, correct? Okay. The Head Start building is not going to be able to handle 45 students or more if we're taken from other towns. So in the future, as we approve this, we're going to have to look for a facility to accommodate this program at somewhere down the line. Yes?
If we reach that enrollment figure,
Well, you have 45 students, and if you don't send them all out of town,
right.
that facility, I don't believe, will handle 45
Right.
people.
At this point in time, we're not anticipating bringing all 45
No, I
back at
understand
once,
that.
right? Mhm.
But we're looking in the future
Mhm.
as a cost saving, but then again, we're going to have to look for a facility somewhere in the town. Yes. Thank you.
Council Crisai, then Council Sakala.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate the committee, your goal team, for putting together this program. I know that when we first met with Mr. Drezek and Mr. Longi, and they were telling us about the idea, it was pretty exciting to hear that, you know, our special ed students that are outplaced are going to be coming back to Enfield. You know, as a parent and as a former educator, and now a council person, I think, you know, it's a win-win situation for everybody, especially with your overall long-range plan of regionalization. You know, and as Councilor Denny was saying, that, you know, you look into the future as to the number of students that you can bring in and from the surrounding towns. If our town wants to be a front runner in a program, here we are, you know, and so I want to congratulate all the members. Even though I did know about the program, I have to say that one of your members kept something pretty silent to me, and you know, and all the hard work that you did. So I want to congratulate you. We are in favor of this program. I was in favor from the beginning. Just one thing that we have to remember is, you know, we have sent our students out of, and you know, out to other towns and districts and other programs. We have to just make sure, and I know that you will, that you have the proper people, the right people, your behavioral technicians, everything in line for success, because we're not going to accept failure here. And to be successful, you have to have the right people involved in this program. And that's my big to-do about this program, being very supportive of it. I will be a spokesperson for it if you need it to be, to go to other towns and talk about it. It's very exciting to hear about this, and so I'm ready to move forward with it and get it going in the fall.
Great, thank you.
Council Sakala.
Thank you. Not to belabor the point, but I just thank you very much for your presentation. Very impressive, and congratulations to the whole goal team. I will say I'm very excited about it. I'm very happy that we are doing this, but I will say that I am more happy that you guys seem to be working in very small, diligent steps and making sure it all goes very well in the very beginning, and not just saying, all right, we're going to go in quick, get as big as we can. I think it's wonderful starting small, making sure you have all the right people in all the right classrooms and all the right settings. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much for coming, and again, just I want to say, when, you know, the superintendent, we had meetings last year, and when the superintendent and his staff, when I said it's time to think differently, we need to think differently with our budget. And to their credit, they have thought differently. And interesting case study when we get, I mean, if we can get the 45 kids, then we have done something pretty good here. And I think the interesting thing, when people talk about government, the role of government, no matter if it's local, state, or federal, imagine government being proactive, seeing an issue coming before them, maybe not right now, but certainly within the near future. And regionalization is going to be upon us before we even want to admit it. And we're doing it the right way with this program, because we are actually regionalizing to help our neighbors as opposed at the expense of our neighbors. And I think that's the key here. And then bringing kids home is obviously the icing on the cake. Not to mention, I don't think you mentioned it, that I think now officially every child that goes through our school system will be exposed to STEAM now. Is that correct? I mean, that's a pretty big, I mean, one of the small missing pieces, that not everyone was exposed to STEAM. That'll change on September or whatever, excuse me, August. I'm not a big fan of the August start of school, by the way. But anyway, so I think that's huge. And the fact that we're going to bring our kids home, and the fact that we can be a leader within the region and take advantage of all the local talent that we have, again, we're being proactive. Imagine that. I mean, imagine government being proactive as opposed to being always reactive. So I appreciate the fact that you folks have come here. I think the council's in universal support of this program. I don't want to speak for them, but I think you got the gist. And again, I commend the superintendent and your staff because, again, I know you've put a lot of thought, effort, and I mean, I think we're really looking forward to the beginning of the school year.
It's great. So are we. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Ready to take a 5-minute break? So, folks, we want to just take a 5-minute break, sorry, and then we'll get the regular meeting started. We'll start at 7:15. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
We have I know people want to get started a regular meeting. Tonight is Monday, May 6, 2019. We have a public hearing for Town Code Chapter 46, Historic Preservation. That'll be first. We apologize to anyone who wants to speak on that. We apologize for the delay. I'll read the ground rules. May 6, 2019. A public hearing has been scheduled to allow interested citizens an opportunity to express their opinion regarding the amendment to the Enfield Town Code, Chapter 46, Historic Preservation, Section 4683. Roll call, please.
Counselor Bosco.
Here.
Counselor Sakala.
Here.
Counselor Crisati.
Here.
Counselor Davis. Counselor Denny.
Here.
Counselor Keiner.
Here.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Counselor Muller.
Here.
Counselor Sferrazza.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Here.
Counselor Ungary.
Here.
There's 10 members present, one is absent.
The following notice of public hearing was published in the Hartford Courant Thursday, April 26, 2019. Town of Enfield legal notice. The Enfield Town Council will hold a public hearing in the Enfield Town Hall, Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, on Monday, May 6, 2019, at 7:17 p.m. to allow interested citizens an opportunity to express their opinion regarding the amendment of Enfield Town Code, Chapter 46, Historic Preservation, Section 46-83. Copies of the amendment are on file in the town clerk's office, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, or at www.enfield-connecticut.org. For more information, please contact the Director of Social Services at 860-253-6507 or lwitten@enfield.org. Number 3, announce the ground rules. A, there is no time limit, but I ask each person not to take up too much time so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. After each person who desires to speak has had the chance to speak, we shall permit those individuals who desire a second chance. After those individuals desire a second chance, we shall permit those individuals a third, fourth, etc. Please refrain from personalities. And this public hearing, Chris, is just real quick. This is about allowing solar access in a historic district.
Correct. People will preface, but we had the presentation last time with the code and the amendments included, so this is not for the public to have input if anybody is concerned.
So this is specific, the opportunity to speak right now is specific to this public hearing. Does anyone would like to speak on this public hearing at this time? Going once. Going twice. I declare the public hearing closed. Moving on to the regular meeting, Monday, May 6, 2019, prayer by Counselor Sakala. Please rise.
Dear God, please watch over us and guide us this evening. Grant us wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues in town. Give us a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a thirst for justice and fairness, confidence in what is good and fitting, and the ability to work together in harmony, even when there is honest disagreement. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
Sakala, are you here?
I'm still here.
Thank you. Counselor Crisati.
Here.
Counselor Davis. Counselor Denny.
Here.
Counselor Keiner.
Here.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Counselor Muller.
Here.
Counselor Sferrazza. Here. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Here.
Counselor Ungary.
Here.
Counselor Bosco.
Here.
There's 10 members present, one is absent.
Moving on to item 4, the fire evacuation announcement. In case of a fire, please orderly exit the town council chambers to the back. You can either go left or right to the exit door, or go to the exit to our left, your right, out the first door to your left, down the stairs, and out into the parking lot in case of a fire. Item number 5, meetings of the minutes of preceding meetings. Special meeting, April 15, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve? By Deputy Mayor Suvak, seconded by Councilor Muller. Any additions, edits, deletions of the minutes? Hearing none by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed, any abstentions? 10 in favor, 0 against. Do I have a motion to approve regular meeting, April 15, 2019 by Councilor Denny, seconded by Councilor Crisati? Any additions, edits, deletions to the minutes? Hearing none by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? 9 in favor, 1 abstention. Special meeting, April 27, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve? Counselor Ungar, seconded by Counselor Sakala. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? 9 in favor, 1 abstention.
I want to change that abstention to this one, not the 15th.
So 10 in favor on the 15th? You sure? Moving on to item number 6, special guest. Will Ms. Rodignall please come up? Excuse me, ma'am. So folks want to gather around?
Going out.
Remember, I'm the one that touched it. So we are here to honor Miss Alyssa Rosignol. Proclamation recognizing Alyssa Donna, I didn't know your middle name was Donna. Wow, Rosignol. Enfield Travel Basketball Association Most Outstanding Player of the Year 2018 and 2019. Before I read this, I'm looking, I don't see my name on here. Maybe we have to add it. I think we have to add an amendment to this thing. Whereas Alyssa Donna Rosignol, born April 18, 2005. So this is harder than it looks, folks. September 18, 2005 is a vibrant, bright, and caring 8th grader that has excelled academically and in basketball. And whereas Alyssa tried basketball in 3rd grade for the Enfield Recreation, and afterwards, her coaches, Allison Daly and Christine Marshall, saw her potential and her love of shooting. And whereas Alyssa was in 5th grade, she decided to try basketball and joined St. Bernard's team. Yeah, that's where my name should have been added. Whereas Coach Bernard Gameau encouraged Alyssa to play AAU, it would go on to coach Alyssa from 5th grade until 8th grade. And whereas in 6th grade, St. Bernard's team won the championship and fostered the blossoming of Alyssa's natural leadership skills. Whereas in the 7th grade, Alyssa was coached by Jackie Ellis and Chris Jackson, who noticed her enthusiasm, personal growth, mental maturity, and her encouragement towards her teammates. And in the 8th grade, Allison Daly and Christine Marshall once again coached Alyssa and expressed that her actions on and off the court embody everything a coach is looking for as a player. And whereas Alyssa has balanced travel basketball, St. Bernard's basketball, and JFK basketball, being named team captain in both her 7th and 8th grade year, and whereas she made the most free throws, 65 out of 100, out of any other female player in the league, and in 8th grade, her JFK team won the championship. Whereas Alyssa's impressive talents and accomplishments have resulted in her being named the Enfield Travel Basketball Association's most outstanding player for the year of both 2018 and 19. Now, therefore, I, Michael Ludwig, Mayor of the Town of Enfield, on behalf of the Town Council, the Town Administration, and the entire community, do hereby recognize Alyssa Donna Rosignol as the Enfield Travel Basketball Association's most outstanding player of the year for both 2018 and 2019, and extend to her our support and best wishes in her future endeavors.
Thank you.
No, I just wanted to say, hey, thank you to the town council for supporting Alyssa. She works hard, but especially her coach, BJ, and Allison over here. You guys really helped her through the years. So I don't know if anybody, how about her mother, dad? They've been, no, nobody else wants to. I guess that's it. So thank you very much.
And for the record, this is Poppy Talarita. Very good.
Okay.
Now we open it up to item 7, public communications petitions. Again, this will be the regular meeting, so you can speak on, again, this is open to the public. We ask that you please refrain from personalities. We are starting at 7:25, just in case we have an hour, so it'll be up to 8:25. So again, we give everyone the opportunity to speak. Anyone would like to speak for the council this time? Steve. First is 5 minutes, and then second time around is 3.
Steve Cogtella, 2 South River Street. And I want to thank the council for asking some questions when the DOT person, when the DOT guy was here. And I want to thank Chris. Last year, he gave me the heads up on these proposed projects. I didn't know the extent of the impact until more recently, like most people. That being said, there was a lot more questions and concerns that were asked at that public hearing on 417. And I'm going to request that the vote to approve both South River Street projects as designed be tabled tonight. There were 8 members of the council that weren't at the public hearing on 417-19. The minutes of those hearings were just made available hours ago. I heard an explanation given today. However, the town was in violation of state statute, but that's not the issue here. Okay. More importantly, there in no way, in my opinion, council members have had enough time to read and have meaningful discussion of what transpired, especially during public comment at those hearings. I don't know how an independent decision can be made to cast a vote without having a full understanding of all the issues raised. The public had no opportunity to review these minutes, just coming about hours ago, and to address council tonight if they desire to do so. And also, when those minutes are published, I'd like to know exactly where they are. I got the link because I specifically requested it. But the general public out here, they can't go to a planning and zoning website or town council website and get those minutes. You have to dig for them. You can't find them anywhere. And if, in fact, council did have those minutes and they weren't provided to the general public, that's even a bigger problem. But I'm not going to suggest that. For the record, I never believed the recording secretary was ever at fault for not providing those minutes in a timely fashion. She's just too efficient and responsible to allow that to happen. I would like to know why a vote is being taken before our concerns and questions have been addressed regarding the 2 projects. Now, obviously, you addressed some today because you got carbon copied with a lot of the questions that were provided to John Cabibbo. But a lot of people didn't carbon copy the council on that. So I'd like to know why, this is going to be going before council tonight to approve these projects as designed. And we were specifically asked to submit concerns and questions, and I believe someone has an obligation to answer them before this goes any further. I mean, that's just common courtesy. I also noticed a reference was made to the Enfield Complete Streets policy adopted by council on 4/20/2015. Reference was obviously made to steer council in a direction to approve these projects as designed. My problem with this policy is that there are several mandatory provisions stipulated that haven't even been complied with. More importantly, the one I took reference to is under implementation. It states, a committee of relevant stakeholders designated by the town manager will, not may, will, and we all been to enough FOIA seminars to know what that means, be created to implement this initiative. I would like to talk to the members of that committee and hear what they had to provide as far as input on these 2 projects. I could find no such committee, and I could find no one associated with it. I did make a verbal inquiry today with engineering, and they never heard of this committee. So on one hand, you have a policy being used to support these projects, yet the town is not even in compliance with the mandatory provisions of its own policy. So a person like me, from the general public, I have to wonder how the town is operating. It makes me question that. The use of this policy is really discretionary by council members. Core commitment, paragraph 4, number 2, and this is a quote, where cost or impacts of accommodation is excessively disproportional to the need or probable use or probable future use. If you review the public comments of 417 public hearing, you will know not to consider this policy in deciding your vote as to these projects are currently designed. When I read that statement, I think of the $850,000 bicycle pedestrian bridge being proposed, a full acquisition and partial acquisition of privately owned property. All we have been asking is for a redesign of these 2 projects so privately owned properties are not impacted. With a little effort, I believe it can be done. After the ECDC scandal, there was a lot of mistrust between public officials and the general public. We've made a lot of progress since then because of transparency. An example of that is how the Planning and Zoning Commission worked with the public when their zone changes were being considered. There was workshops, with consultants and commissioners, dialogue back and forth. There was a few bumps in the road, but we got through that. And I can walk away and say, you know, I can't complain about anything that happened.
10 seconds, Steve, sorry.
Okay. The forward progress made, thanks to the efforts of planning and zoning, has been lost with these projects, the way they've been handled. The public hearing of 417 is proving to be no more than a charade. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Mr. Young? Welcome.
Good evening. George Young, Holly Lane, and Enfield. My first 5 topics are duplicate page, the WPC original loan from the town, workman's compensation, excessive salary increase or transparency, and the St. James West Road 2015 project. Page 36 on your proposed budget should be blank, as it is a duplication of page 37, which also has the total for protection of life and property general fund. I believe the original loan to WC was about $2.5 million from the town. And year after year, the taxpayers continue to pay the WPC, which is supposed to repay the loan back to the town. Each year, the WPC struggles to pay it, and it has previously not paid its annual installment. Is there any way the balance could be considered as seed money to the WPC and eliminate this debt and burden from the WPC and from the sewer usage bill? I'm sure the council, the town manager, and the town attorney could probably figure out something without violating state law. In the prior year approved budget, I added up the workman's compensation expense, which appears throughout the budget without rhyme nor reason as to why they appear in certain departments and not in others, versus one total for the town in their budget, which seems to be the way that the Board of Education chose it in their budget. Last year, the Board of Education reported $642,500 on page 104, and this year they show $614,419 on page 105, or a decrease of $28,081. Meanwhile, after adding up all the various amounts from the town's departments, I believe the total for last year was $1,846,585, and this year they show $1,822,923, or a decrease of $23,662. The total for workman's compensation for the town and the Board of Education is proposed to be $2,437,342, which is down from last year's total of $2,489,085. While I welcome the decrease of the combined $51,743, I believe we can and should do better. Since a great deal of this money is self-funded, we should encourage safe work environments, worker safety with posters and lectures, and suggestions from employees, etc., to help bring this cost down even further, which I believe is doable. I'm sure the insurance carrier would welcome the chance to assist in this at no additional cost. If there was an actual total in the town budget for workman's compensation, then maybe my figure would be more accurate if it is not already. The Social Services Administration budget on page 91 shows that we are eliminating the Assistant Director of SSI/grant manager position that had a salary of $76,500. My first question is whether or not this is the same person that the town manager said at the last meeting was doing such a great job of getting grants for Enfield Child Development Center. My second question on the same page shows the Director of Social Services salary would go from $103,949 to $181,131 per year. This is absolutely excessive. Or is there an error or transparency that we should know about? I recently read that there could be a change to come after I had done my homework, so I'm sure this will be reviewed. Perhaps we can get an update on the St. James West Road 2015 project. When is the anticipated starting date for St. James Avenue? And has the Connecticut Water Company finished their destruction of the road to put the sewer lines in? Before starting the roads project, I hope the town looks at the road and clears the Connecticut Water Company's work. I know there has been a lot of rain, but there are constant puddles of water on the east side of the road. Is it a water table problem, or do the pipes leak from below?
30 seconds, George. 30 seconds.
The town engineer should look at this with the water company and make a determination if corrective action is required before the road is done, and we have to spend more money to correct the problem we now know about.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Kelly, then the gentleman there.
Hi, Kelly Hemler, 10 Hartford Ave. The Opera House Players is going to be a great addition to Enfield, so I am helping them raise some money to get into their new facility at 100 High Street. So I'm doing a fundraiser at Hot Table. It's next Wednesday, May 15th. If you come in, you bring them a flyer or just tell them you're there for the Opera House between 3 and 9, and we'll get 25%. And if you haven't gone to see Newsies yet, it's pretty awesome. So it's this weekend and next weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
My name's Joe Saxton. I live at 76 South River Street. This is a letter I wrote to the hearing. I attended the hearing, but I wrote this afterwards, and I delivered it to the town clerk, and I addressed it to the original ConnDOT engineer that held the hearing. But here goes. This letter is my response to the hearing held April 17, 2019 at the Enfield Town Hall. First, I'll address the Project 48190, Connecticut River Access Project, and then Project 48198, the South River Street Bridge Replacement. Project 48190 is using money from an old congressional earmark for bike path crossing high-speed rail. The first project was for an elevated crossing near Connecticut Route 190. That was abandoned, and this project replaced it. Earmarks from that area were notorious for poor spending on projects like a bridge to nowhere. It's questionable if the Hartford line is high-speed rail. At least the abandoned plan had provisions for an actual rail crossing. This plan uses an existing underpass. The repurposing of this earmark results in a costly footbridge to nowhere. The same results could be achieved with a simple route change. From Pearl North Main Street, use a Stuntic Street. Make a Stuntic one way from where Cottage Green intersects on the east to where it intersects again on the west. Paint a bike lane in that area, a couple of Jersey barriers beyond the westernmost driveway on the Stuntic. And that would complete that. The river quality is another problem. A complaint should be made to the EPA for allowing Springfield, Mass. To violate the Clean Water Act by excessive CSO. Sometimes the river water quality measured in Long Meadow, Mass. is rated unsafe for boating. Now on to Project 48109, South River Street Bridge Replacement. Seems to be more than a simple bridge replacement. The current width of the bridge is not used, and the new plan makes it wider. Eminent domain and demolishing the last habitable house on Main Street are unnecessary. The problem is not the bridge, but the Main Street underpass. The primary reasons for this river area not being developed is limited access. The Main Street underpass is both low and narrow. For any serious development, it has to be addressed. Encouraging more automobile traffic into this area without addressing the underpass issue is like having TOZ zoning without a train station. Making a transportation center on the west side of the tracks was another earmark. This one was originally for buses. According to the McMahon report, CT Transit didn't even want to send their buses to that site. This money could have been used better to improve the actual commuter bus lot, better lighting, maybe an indoor shelter, security cameras, and much more. Again, plans being made without addressing the underpass. Taking the Everstars property could also turn out to be short-sighted. Future energy needs could still be met by this property. Who knows what's in the cards? Run-of-river turbines or other hydropower. The power companies are always near rivers for a reason. Why not try for some type of agreement to use part of the property? Power companies often let the public use lands they own. Warren Thompson saw the power and water and the economic value it had. That was real economic development. I know at best I'm cynical, but taking a taxpayer's property to forward this vision of riverfront access is not responsible. The cesspool on the southeast corner of South River Bridge was not even discussed at the hearing. That is a major structure. I doubt the railroad would allow anything like that on their property. South River Street will be more out of line with the proposed bridge. Are there any plans to demolish homes on South River Street to make it more compliant? My view is the town is using the proposed bridge to acquire property. As a citizen of Enfield, CT, and the state of Connecticut, I am against this larger bridge project and using it in eminent domain. Address the access to the area first, larger underpass or rail crossing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Ma'am. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
My name is Marjorie Stratinger. I live at 35 North River Street with my husband, Jay. This is very emotional, so forgive me if I'm stumbling a little bit. And I do want to thank the council, too, for some of the questions that you asked, which are deeply in our hearts, and we appreciate even saying that you wish you had known about this for, a year ago. I wish we had, too. We went to many zoning meetings, planning and zoning meetings, and we did ask many times if our property was going to be in jeopardy, and we were assured that no private property would be taken for any of this project that was being thought of. Then we don't know how to reconcile that with going to a meeting on April 17th, where not only is this only being thought of, but it's well underway with paid engineers and paid consultants, and monies coming in that evidently the money is important enough to take property to use, as though our life and our properties aren't as important as a project that the town would like to have and use the money for. So it feels to us like we weren't really given an accurate picture of this when we went to all these meetings and addressed this. We were so often assured this would not interfere with any private property. And we asked if the zoning was going to require us to, at some point, be looking at losing our property. And now that we're being told about railroad and access and things like that, it looks like our future is kind of bleak. We bought a foreclosure 5 years ago on North River. I cashed in my retirement funds to renovate that. So we've invested quite a bit of that, in doing that. And I feel like now we don't even know if we're going to be able to continue living that in that house in our old age because of this plan. And then my last point is I'm not sure why a bike path and a 2-lane bridge, which easily could be 1 lane from what I can see, I'm not an engineer, and a sidewalk are more important than our private properties. We're taxpayers. We love our community. We love Thompsonville. We're not against projects that improve the area, but it feels like the cart's going before the horse. Like so many things have not been addressed before we're spending money. And then when we talk about a $7 million project for South River Street, that just, I hate to say it, but it seems like an oxymoron to me to spend that kind of money in an area that is kind of happy the way we are. And I'm not sure who it is that makes this decision to improve our life for us that we don't agree with. Anyway, thank you for hearing me. I did also submit a written letter after the April 17th meeting, and I don't think any of those things have been addressed at all. So I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. No one else like to speak for the council? Jack, then Walt.
Jack Sheridan, 7 Buchanan Road. I had a little bit of a chance to look through the budget, and I'll address that in a minute. One of the things that bothers me is that these snake oil salesmen that come before you and sell you all of these ideas that you seem to jump on. The sinking fund to get around the town charter's spending limits, the TIF financing. I ask for examples of things that have happened that actually have proved themselves to be beneficial. That hasn't happened. Woodward and Curran Consultants talk about what the sewer use thing in the transition was, and then it turns out after that they missed that mark by a mile. So now they're doing the same thing with the town garage and their suggestions on how to charge for things that are currently taxed, part of your tax system. To me, greed is what is at the base of this thing. If we weren't so greedy in making up our minds, just like with the grant money that we get, we're asking for grant money, we get the JFK thing through. After people voted it down, we continue to go after it until finally you get people to vote for it just because you dropped it a little bit. We could have done that whole project for $16 million, but now, because of our greed, we've got the whole state helping to pay for what we wanted in our school, not what we needed, what we wanted. So that really bothers me. You've got people struggling in town to try and stay in this town, and you don't seem to care about that. People, the attendance at the budget meeting was so far off that you can't possibly think that the reason they didn't come was because they're happy with what you're doing. It's just not so. They're tired of coming and not being heard. The school budget, the school maintenance budget, and the conditions that the schools were in and got into, that was budgeted, millions of dollars budgeted every year in the school budget. And then it was directed elsewhere because it's an autonomous budget. Shouldn't be allowed. If you want to see places that get things for free and want things for free, and look at all the people that are running for office now for presidential, look at Venezuela, right? Look at the socialistic free stuff that they get. Look at our budget book. We've been paying up $800,000 for substitute teachers in the school budget. Do people actually realize $800,000? What? These are not substitute teachers. This isn't the thing where they call up somebody because somebody came in sick today. These are there all the time. That's just outrageous. So grant money's not free. There are strings attached. We have empty seats in our schools, and before you know it, the policies of the schools will be directed by the state because we have empty seats and they're going to fill them. We have schools that are empty, and we're going toward what the state wants is a regional school district. And we'll fill all those empty schools that we have now and bus people in. So if we think we have problems now, wait till that happens. They then will regulate what the teachers' salaries are, just like they did with doctors and with Medicare when the government got involved with Medicare and Medicaid. Now you don't have enough doctors. We have good teachers in this town, there's no doubt. I really know that we have good teachers. But are we going to continue to have good teachers if we keep trying to regulate what they do? And the other thing is, the old senior center, we gave it away. Then we gave, this is taxpayers' dollars, we could have sold it, but we gave it away. And then we gave them another $25,000 to help get them started with it. And then you look in there, just real quick, through the budget book, you look through and see $400,000 being spent on playscapes. And I could go on and on. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Walt?
Takes me a while to get up here.
So I'll start your clock already.
That's the way old age is like that. Walt Shermer.
Welcome.
From the great town of Enfield.
You sure?
On Belinda Land. Oh, I am sure. Yes. I mean, it's great to see a nice panel of 11 people here that are going to decide on the budget.
Make sure that button's... Okay, it's on. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Maybe if I talk a little closer.
There you go.
I should know better. I'm sorry. Anyway, I just picked this town budget up a few days ago, and I was looking through, trying to find a couple items. Couldn't find them, so I had to sit down page by page, go through. I got to page 139. I stopped and I looked, and it pertains to ETV, and I'm sure everybody knows that's for Enfield Television. I kind of think that's my little baby because I brought it up from day one. In fact, I've been videotaping. I don't know how many people know me. Hopefully, I know the police chief does. The teenager over here, the town manager, when he was, in his early 20s. I'm sorry, not teenager. I know all the people here, and I don't think, when I went thumbing through this, I says, how can I determine what's good and what isn't? You know, that's 11 people right over here that have to decide what should go on. And you're going to say, we don't know. We can't go through this like that. So we put it to the town manager. And he's going to have the same, he's going to say, I don't know everything about this. So what's he going to do? He's going to go to all the directors of all the different programs and ask the directors, what are you looking for? And then he has to, the town manager has to decide what should go, what shouldn't go, so forth and so on. Well, as you know, I've been videotaping the town meetings and all the kids on all their activities for the last 30-some years, 38 years. I hate to believe that, but that's the case. And I enjoyed doing that. I said, back in those days, I said, how can I let the town people know what is going on in Enfield? Lo and behold, Continental Cable comes in and says, we want to put cable in here. And I think the town council created a committee, and they decided we're going to have Continental Cable come in and give us our cable TV. I said, boy, that's an opening that I can't, everybody's going to watch it on Continental Cable at that time. Then Media One took it over a few years later, and now Cox has it. So I've been through all the different companies. And who would think that that little black cable going into your house can do today going back 30-some years ago. Unbelievable, you know. Now, looking at this ETV, and that, when I used to do a one-camera shoot in this beautiful room, I would have to take the good old T120s, 2060 videotapes, go over to Continental Cable in those days, put the titles on it and show it, but now it's 2 weeks old. And everybody, in fact, the town people come up to me and said, well, first I started with just the Board of Ed meetings. And then I found out that the kids would watch the Board of Ed meetings to know what's going on in their school system. I was the first one to videotape town meetings. And I had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I found out that the kids were watching that to see what was going on. And I said, that's exactly what I wanted to do. You know, then now the town council says, hey, we want to see the meetings as well. And I said, I've got too much on my plate now. I can't do everything. But if something important is coming, we'll do it. Yeah. And I'm going to have to come back in 3 minutes.
No
but the
worries.
important thing is they want to eliminate the station manager for ETV. And you don't know what Comey Biano does for this town in the last, he's been here about 5, 6 years now. He has gotten new equipment. He's got, now we have data streaming, so you don't need cable 16 Cox. You can go on your computer, go data streaming. You can watch these meetings live. That is just fantastic. And I'm going to stop now, but I'll take the next 3.5 minutes and come back and finish out.
All
But,
right, you
but
got
thank
it.
you for listening. But
Yeah.
that's a very, that we need a station manager. We surely do. I don't want to see our ETV go down the tubes. That's the only reason that the people watch these. Newspapers don't tell it like it is. The TV shows everything what it is. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, Walt. Appreciate it.
I'll be back in 3.5 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
Walter. Not the other Walt, sorry. Walt.
Too many Walters.
I got the ER here. Don't know if I can be better than that. Walter Cruzel, 21 Charlie Road, also Board of Ed Chairman. Thank you for your support of the Eagle Academy, that presentation you got earlier. And also just got word this morning, we had 2 students recognized by the CIAC Scholarship Athletes for Enfield. And if I butcher their names, I apologize. Jamie Galovich and David Stefanik. So I want to recognize them. They were recognized just yesterday as scholarship athletes for Enfield. Every year, 2 are chosen. So wanted to recognize them. And again, thank you all, and have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Chris.
Good evening, Chris Rutledge, 7 Victory Street. I wanted to come before you today to talk about leveraging technology for communication. And a lot of these ideas came to mind after the recent budget hearings that we've done in town, the one at Henry Barnard, the one at Enfield High School. I think we'd all agree on 2 things. One, public communication is actually vital for local government to function. It's how we hear the opinions of the people around town, and we don't know everything, so it's it's important to get those outside perspectives. I think we'd also agree that communication is becoming very digital, and we're slowly moving towards, the fact that a lot of people even get their basic news via Facebook and other social media platforms. Unfortunately, sometimes it can be more comfortable to sit behind that computer screen or on the phone, typing. We even have that issue in the schools where sometimes people unfortunately present their issues on Facebook before we'll hear about them at a school level. But you really have two options there. You can either complain and condemn it, or you can leverage it. At work, for example, I work in Rocky Hill, and I'm the only person on my team within 1,000 miles. We do a lot of things via virtual meetings. We use a system called WebEx, but there's things like NetMeeting. You can even, as this is being broadcast on YouTube right now, you can even do YouTube Lives. And a lot of that was coming to mind when, we had the last budget conversation. And if you hear on Facebook, you'd think there'd be that auditorium at Enfield High School would be completely full of people who want to know more information, who have questions, who want to dive into the budget. But, for various reasons, people have other commitments. It's not always possible to get out. We have maybe 50 people in there. The people that did ask questions asked very insightful questions, and I compliment them for that. But perhaps if we considered leveraging some of that technology, we could get more participation. Like, for example, if those budget conversations were done via YouTube Live, you could have a representative from our technology department monitoring the live feed, and if people had questions, they could just type it in, and that person who's moderating the live feed could then relay those to the people, sitting up there. You could do things like WebEx or NetMeetings, where you could literally have like a dial-in number, and people could, in the same kind of form and fashion, they could either, dial into the meeting, they could listen, see it online, and at the same time, there's a chat feature where somebody, again, could moderate that. And just as, we have quarterly town hall meetings at work, people will type in their questions for the people to answer. Perhaps somebody could do that as well. I don't know if this would definitely increase public participation at these meetings, but you know what? Sometimes it doesn't hurt to try, and I know that the cost of those things is very minimal. I mean, it would be a 4-figure item at most. And for, something that small might be an interesting thing to consider for those future conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? For the first time? Anyone else for the first time? For the second time? Steve. This will be 3 minutes, and we have about 20 minutes left.
Steve Gottel at 2 South River Street. I think it's on now. One thing I just want to point out with regard to the Amtrak right-of-way, because that question was brought up, but I don't think it was fully explained, and I think it needs to be examined a little more. It seems that railroad law is quite complex. What I want to say, though, is that what was provided to me, there was a deed and a railroad right-of-way map. It's Section 8 on the map. You could actually go onto the Yukon evaluation maps, and you can see it as clear as day. The one that was provided by the town, you can't even read it. But go onto Yukon Railroad Evaluation Maps, and you can find Section 8 on that map in the Thompsonville section. And we talk about South River Street encroaching on railroad property. Well, in that Section 8, so does Main Street underneath the underpass. I mean, are we going to move the underpass over? If you look at North River Street, and in particular the Casket Company is right on the railroad right away. I don't think anybody's going to knock that down if the railroad says, well, you're on right away. So that needs to be looked into a little bit further. So to be quite honest, I'm not satisfied with what the representative said with regard to the answer to the questions. Again, it needs to be looked into a little more thoroughly. I've specifically asked that. I was also provided with a deed from 1892 from Lauren Pease. The deed doesn't match up with the railroad right-of-way. I asked for an explanation on that. I haven't gotten one. So I do appreciate the questions you did ask, but there are many more questions that, at least to my satisfaction, need to be answered. And in order to be comfortable with this whole situation. And I think in order for you guys to be comfortable with it, if you're really sincere about taking people's property unnecessarily, to look into that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Walt and Mr. Young.
Again, Walt Shermer, still the great town of Enfield.
2 minutes.
Belinda Lane. We did so many events outside of the town meetings, like the Wreath Across America. Comey and I did it, I don't know, 3, 4 times. They call us up, the town, and say, hey, we're going to come through. Can we stop again? Because we treated them with kid gloves. They love what we did for them. It was good advertisement for them and good advertisement for us. So those are just a few things. We did all the graduations at the high schools, and we put it on the air for the people to see. We just do so many things, and the denominator is Comey. He does everything. He gets a phone call and say, we want to do a recording tomorrow night, and they hang up. He's got to figure out where is it going to be, how many people, do we need audio, do we need video, what kind of equipment. He does all that behind the closed doors. You don't know the things that he goes through. Tonight, we've got 2 people in the control room. Who's over there? Comey's over there, making sure everything is going good. Then he might go downstairs and watch it on TV. But he's here. He spends time and time and time on this, and people don't know that, but he's here all the time. If I got a problem, I'll call him up, and he calls me right back, lets me know what's going on. Comey, without him, I just see our Enfield TV just going bye-bye. And also, if I don't think any of the townspeople know that there's a possibility of not seeing live TV anymore. I don't know, because no one can do the job that Comey does, and the few bucks that he gets, it's a shame. But he loves what he does, and he's just full of up there in his brain. He knows all the latest equipment, and he thinks of the town. He's been here a long time, so I want you to make sure that when you vote. Look at that page 139 and make sure that Comey's got his job, because without him, it's a sad, sad story. And the people in town, when they find out that they might leave it, they might not, I don't know. But anyway, God bless you. Keep it in mind.
Thanks, Walt.
So much.
Appreciate it.
All of you. And I could say more, but we'll save that for another week.
You got it.
But I have a half an hour.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Young.
George Young, Enfield, Connecticut. I have 2 more topics. One is executive salary versus the rank and file, and the last one is the dog fund. Let's start with the next area I'd like to cover is salaries of those above $100,000 and below $50,000. We do not seem to have a problem asking the rank and file that earn less than $50,000 to forego a raise when those are the people who truly need that 1% to 3% increase. But it seems that there has been no reluctance to increase the salaries of those above $100,000. I'd like to point out that on the proposed town budgets, there are 17 positions that pay more than $100,000 per year, or $2,168,538. I would propose that in the interest of tight budgetary times, those individuals accept the 5% decrease in their proposed salary, but not reduce them below $100,000, which would save the town $89,000, or 4.1% of the proposed salary budget. Not too many years ago, we had a town manager and an assistant to the town manager. Their salary was $150,000 and $50,000 respectively. The assistant to the town manager position was not filled for a period of time. A new town manager was hired. That seems to be doing a great job at a salary of $165,000, which the council approved, and no assistant to the town manager was hired. The town recently hired an assistant town manager at a salary of $95,000. So the town has gone from a $200,000 department to a $260,000 department in a couple of years. We are now paying $60,000 or 30% more for that same department. Is this something we can afford? I'm not sure if the words assistant to the town manager is something different than assistant town manager, but I can't believe it is a $45,000 value to the town. Lastly, I noticed a little fund in the proposed budget called the Dog Fund, which has a budget of $51,623, which is the same as last year. The activity says animal control, and it receives funds from licenses and permits, and mostly $32,023 from general fund transfers, which is the same as 2019. The part-time salaries were $30,000 a couple years ago, and it's now $41,000. Is this part-time salary for an animal control officer similar to the one we have full-time in the police services area, or is it a clerical staff? If the Social Security and Medicare taxes were calculated correctly on that part-time person, then the town could budget less monies to them. I don't think anyone is paying attention to some of the detail that should be looked at. These are comments similar to the ones I have made in the past, but obviously they fell on deaf ears. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak before the council for the second time? Jack?
Jack Sheridan, 7 Buchanan Road. I'd like to follow up with what Walt Schirmer said. You know, I've been coming to these town meetings for over 40 years. And I remember when Walter used to drag all that equipment in here, and I used to help him sometimes because he'd get here early, then he'd leave and go home or go back to the Cox Cable place or Continental and have to go through all those tapes the old-fashioned way. And he did a heck of a job. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think ETV would be here today. I mean, that's how much of the thing that he had to do with, you know, for so many years. I know for a while he was covering the schools, and I went and got trained to cover the town meetings. And I know from the very short time that I did it, it wasn't easy. So we owe him a big thanks, and I just had to get up and support Walter because he's been supporting us for a long time, and a lot of us wouldn't have known. A lot of people who, you know, feel better staying at home and watching it on TV. So, thank Walter.
Thanks, Jack. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Anyone else for the second time? Anyone else for a third time? Hearing none, I declare public communications closed. Moving on to item 7. Item 8, I apologize. Councilor communication petition. Councilor Sakala.
Thank you. Just a couple of things I want to respond to. I'll start with Mr. Young. I did, on the social services salary, I asked that exact question on the budget presentation, and it is an issue with Munis, so it's not $181,000. So don't worry about that. Rest assured that the town does a lot of work trying to keep workers' compensation costs down. They do education, they do posters, they do videos, anything you can think of, they're doing. So understand we are doing that. Let's see. Jack, I appreciate and always respect your opinion, but as far as the JFK referendum goes, the way I look at it is we as state taxpayers, we're going to pay for a school wherever it was going to go, and we're now going to get to benefit from it. Regarding South River Street, so Steve, Joe, Marjorie, the information we were given tonight in the public hearing stated it's $3.3 million. 80% of that's coming from the federal funds. And I mean, please understand that the majority of the people up here, or everybody up here, doesn't want to take anybody's property. But the questions we have been asking are very pointed, at least mine, wanting yes or no information, and we want just the facts. And what we asked tonight, and the information we've been given, because this is information we've gotten for months upon months upon months regarding this, is that there is no way to do this project and not take personal property or the real estate. I wish there was a way. I asked specifically tonight if there was a way, but if we didn't take property, they wouldn't be able to address all of the issues. And my understanding is once you start a project and once you start doing improvements, you need to make sure they're all up to code, all up to the compliance of whatever the state regulations are, and you have to fix the problems that you know about. So now if we know that the road is on Amtrak property, we have to fix that. There is no way to make it, even bringing it down to a one-lane bridge, which I believe Marjorie may have asked about, that's not going to solve the problem of the road being on Amtrak property. That would solve the problem of the bridge being smaller, but not the road being on Amtrak property. So in my heart of hearts, I wish that there was a way to do it. Again, I've got pointed answers saying no. If there is other information that somebody has and there's another way, I would love to hear it, but the information we've been given is that there's just not. I think that's all I have right now.
Thank you. Councilor Ungaro, then Councilor Sferrazza. Councilor Sferrazza, go ahead.
Mr. Young, as far as the dog fund, I think I'm correct in this, that a lot of our residents don't know, in the whole state of Connecticut, Enfield is #1 in the collection of registered licenses for dogs out of the 168 towns. And a lot of that's due to the part-timers that are doing their job, going out and make sure your dog is licensed. So we're #1 in the state, so they're bringing in revenue. All that money goes into the dog fund. The other part you need to understand is the part-time animal control officers are in the union. They're part of the union. So their salary is part of the police union contract. So there's not a lot of leeway on salary there. I would like to let everybody know that about 2 weeks ago, I was able to attend a meeting in Hartford for CROG. So CROG is the regional organization of communities. And this specific meeting was talking about the railroads. There's about 6 or 7 towns that are still waiting for the train stops in their cities and towns. I attended that meeting representing the council. I know the manager was there, the assistant manager was there, and Lori was there. And as everybody from the town started to speak, they kept talking about, we need a train station in our town. We got to have a train station. And they were asking for millions of dollars to get this train station built. I was perplexed. I said to myself, what are they going to do with this train station? Are they going to sell tickets in it? And at the end of the meeting, I went to one of the towns and I said, why do you need a train station? Are you going to sell tickets? He said, no. I said, then why do you need millions of dollars? And he looked at me and he didn't have an answer. But what I want you to know, it's very important. What came out of that meeting was after an hour and a half of discussion, the committee decided the best course of action to take would be for the individual towns to meet with the Commissioner of Transportation and make a pitch. And it was very difficult for me to sit at that meeting and not speak up, because unbeknownst to everybody in the room, except those Enfield contingent, our town manager went to the Department of Transportation of his own initiative 2 weeks before this and met with the commissioner and made a pitch for our town. And I don't think he was pitching a $1 million train station. He said, let's get a platform. What's wrong with a platform? And I know we haven't got an answer yet, but I think it's important to know that what the other towns are planning on doing, we were at the front of the line with that. and I think that was important. And the last thing I want to talk about, Mr. Cocktail, is South River Street. When I got appointed to the council, I knew there were going to be decisions that were going to be difficult. And I said to myself, what I want to be able to do is do the most good for the most people. I can't do everything for everybody. So when we look at this South River Street, we know that the bridge was ready to fall into the river. It was rated a 2, critical. We had to suspend traffic down there. It's only temporarily repaired. That bridge has to be repaired. There's no question about it. And now we find out that we're encroaching on Amtrak property. The manager just described the problems we're having down at the water pollution plant, where all we want to do is put an earth berm, and it's causing tremendous problems. So this project's going to cost about $3 million. I'm also sensitive and agree, Jack, when Jack Sheridan says that grant money is just our other pocket. He's absolutely right. It's our tax money that does it. But in this particular case, here's the option. We pass on this project. Another community in this state is going to get that 80%. And we will then have to build that bridge, and if Amtrak comes after us for that road, and that we will have to pay millions of dollars out of this community, where we have the opportunity now to do it for 20%, even though it's grant money. So I will be supporting this, and I wish there was another way it could be done, but I think it would be irresponsible in keeping with what I'm trying to do, is the most good for the most people. I wouldn't want to burden our community with a $4 or $5 million price tag in 3 years because the bridge has collapsed or whatever. So that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Ungar?
I wanted to thank everybody for coming and speaking. I appreciate all your comments. Lately, a lot of our focus has been on all these very important issues, but on a lighter note, I would be amiss if I didn't mention a few kudos to people that are very well deserving. Enfield High had their honors breakfast last week, and there were 400 students that were all recognized and given an award. And that means our students are working really hard and that our teachers are doing a good job. And I also want to congratulate Joe's son, got an award that morning. Another thing, Enfield High had their play, their Willy Wonka play, and it was amazing. It was the sets, the construction, the costumes, everything was perfect. They had Oompa Loompas and Violet turned violet, and the kids just had a ball. They sang and danced their hearts out. They did a great job. I'd like to congratulate Glenn and Sue Reese, who had that all up. They did a wonderful, superb job. Also at JFK, they had Mary Poppins Jr., and they had over 100 students participate in that play, and it was just nice to see such a wonderful turnout. And I'd like to congratulate Kristen Fitzsimmons on all her hard work. Thanks.
Councilor Bosco, then Councilor Crisati.
I want to say that I went to the ECDC talent show, and we have a whole bunch of talented little kids down there, and they did a wonderful job, and it was very enjoyable. That being said, Steve, and I know we can't have a back and forth, but I don't know if you thought about seeing, and maybe we can help you with whatever permits or something to move that house back. I mean, they did it, Mr. Vish did it, you know, and I mean, you have a lot of property there where you got there was the whole bucket of blood sitting down there, so you know, there was another parcel on that property, so I don't know if that can be done, but, you know, with the price that they're going to pay you for the house, you may be able to just get it slid back and then keep your house and keep everything going there. So I don't know if you thought about that, and I don't even know if I don't know if it's even possible, but, you know, it's just a thought, because what we are going to have to vote on is heartbreaking. And all I could tell you is I would be so mad at this point here. There would be fire coming out of my ears knowing where you're sitting. And I came in, And I figured, yep, this is what we're going to do. Then when I was asking them some questions, I go, whoa, wait a minute. I says, yeah, I don't think I can support this. And then I got the other answers that we needed, and it's really terrible because, again, like Carl said, we got to take care of 45,000 people. But if there's a way we can do something to get that house moved, I mean, they got to pay a decent money for the house, and then it would just probably be, knocking off the price of the land and just push it back, and you'll have the best of both worlds, a brand new foundation and your old house.
Welcome for negotiation.
Thank you.
Councilor Crisati, then Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Well, Joe, you took the words right out of my mouth. This is a it's a difficult situation. This is, the two projects that are going to be the cornerstone of development, making things look a little nicer down in the Thompsonville section. We don't want to see anybody lose their property. We don't want to see houses being demolished. But this is a project, it's over $3 billion, 80% reimbursement. It's a very difficult situation. This is my district. I represent you, and I want to just make sure that, the state of Connecticut and us as a town are going to be supportive in you, and, the reimbursement and negotiations, that everything, is going to be in your favor in regard to, property. It's very difficult. And it's probably the most difficult thing that, us as even a council have to make this type of decision. We always think, is the redesigning of this project going to be an easy thing, but when you're dealing with Amtrak, it's very difficult. So, I'm going to be supportive of the projects, but I'm also going to be very supportive of you to make sure that your dealings with the state of Connecticut and us as a town is going to be to your advantage and to your family. Okay, and and we've had discussions before. Finally got those minutes for you. We've had conversation, and I know that you've had conversation, with the state, but the next thing will be the negotiations. And once again, we will be behind you and be very supportive of that, and I know the developmental services will also. There's a couple other things, in regard to what Lori said over at Enfield High School. Well, it was a 3-day affair over there, and I spent 2 of the days passing out certificates to those students, and it was a great event sponsored over at Enfield High School for over 400 kids making honor roll all year long. It's quite an accomplishment. Another thing, I just want to a special shout out to Department of Public Works and Mark Garr and his staff for the moving of the Enfield Hall of Fame over to the Hall of Champions at Enfield High School. You redid the walls, you put the plaques up there. It looks awesome, so people can now go and take a look at and go into that hall and see all the accomplishments of people throughout the years. And I just wanted to give a shout out to you. I know there was a deadline on there. We had the opening. We had Bill Rasmussen, the founder of ESPN, coming in. And, you said you'd have it done by that date, and you went above and beyond. When we first walked in and we saw what it looked like, we said, wow, this is the first thing that, it was fantastic. So thank you for that. The Enfield Together Coalition had their dinner. And, a lot of people were recognized, people that are involved. I know, Chief, you're involved with Enfield Together Coalition, and there's many members here Lori Ungar, you guys were recognized, and it's the fantastic job that you do with that committee and commission. I want to thank you as being part of that committee myself. I also attended the Mary Poppins production. We also had, over at Asnunta Community College, was the Senior Symposium on Dementia. A special shout out to Pat Lenahan and Dave Goyette for putting together that symposium. And I've been to, 3 of those symposiums, but this one here was very special. The people from the state of Connecticut were awesome. We had Gina Sullivan, who actually gave a personal take on being a caregiver for somebody with dementia. It was very heartwarming, and many of the people on the council were in attendance at that also. Also, this particular weekend, I just want to say that Allied's sports rehabilitation athletic programs had their time trials at Loomis this past weekend, and it's just another preparation for the teams, swimming and track teams that will be going to the state games, which are held in June. And the toast of Enfield was awesome a couple of Friday nights ago, and saw a lot of familiar faces at that. A lot of good things are happening in Enfield, and a lot of difficult decisions also that are happening in Enfield. But for the people at South River Street and North River Street that are being affected by these projects, we want to do and make things right and respectable for everybody. So that's about it.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I guess the 3 people that attended was me, Mike, and Bob were there. And all 3 of us were surprised when we saw, because we've been watching, different things with transit, oriented districts. And with that being said, Mike and I met with our caucus, by phone and got them the information. And we actually submitted 9 questions on the 25th and did receive answers on the 29th. Most of the questions that we asked have been asked from the floor, so I'm not going to reread them. But, the one thing that we need to do is we do need to ensure that, if properties are needed for, the betterment of the town and an area, it needs to be done in a very fair fashion. And the town of Enfield, if the house can be moved, it probably should be moved. And if there's not property there, there might be property that's town-owned that, we work to make everybody so that they're whole. But I think that, we sometimes have to accept things that, the 2 examples from the Hazardville section, I still miss that tennis court. And it was a really nice home that was taken, just as, these homes are very nice, and it's just not easy. But we did, although there were only 3 of us there, that we were surprised and did go back to our caucuses. It was not something that went unnoticed by the rest of the council, and I wanted you to, at least understand that. And we don't very often get together as a caucus and send in our questions and wait for, John to get back to us. But he did do them in a timely fashion. And they were honest and direct answers, and it was shared with the rest of the council. The mayor wants me to take care of all the business of the evening. Motion to suspend the rules and move items E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, and P to miscellaneous and proceed to vote.
Motion made by Deputy Mayor Suzak.
So moved.
Seconded by Councilor Denny to move items E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, and P to miscellaneous. Any discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? Hearing none by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions? 10 in favor, 0 against. Items E through P will be moved to
I just have
miscellaneous.
one more item.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I just have one more clarification. I want everybody to know that our health insurance, we're self-insured, but we are not on our workman's comp. We did look at going to self-insured for workman's comp, but we never could get enough seed money to move forward. We are fully insured on workman's comp.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on to item 9, town manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. I think I have a list of things that have been brought up that I should address, and I think probably the most important item for discussion this evening is the South River Street Bridge. And I'd like to thank Mr. Cocktail, who always comes prepared with the facts and is always civil and polite, and that's much appreciated. He's a pleasure to work with. Also, from that neighborhood, Joe and Marjorie came up, and again, I thank them for their comments, their heartfelt sentiments, and their cordiality, especially in the fact that they're directly affected by this, especially Mr. Cocktail. I'll just say that, you know, I wish we could go back in time. And I think you see that today. I try to be very transparent. You had 2 presentations here this evening, one on a major program and initiative of the Board of Ed that the town has to be a partner in, moving Head Start. Truthfully, and that's probably the biggest move. They told you about the philosophy of it and the good that's going to be done, but we have to now do the logistics to move it to Stowe and all of those issues that we're working with building and grounds and making sure we don't diminish the experience for students there while we try to accomplish this great thing for those students being brought back. We also had a presentation on the bridge because when it came to my attention and they had the public hearing, we thought it important to bring forth, instead of just putting a resolution for you to discuss, to bring the people most familiar, DOT and Public Works, before you. I can't be responsible for a lot of these projects that started 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And unfortunately, there were public hearings and there were presentations and votes of council. I wasn't here. A lot of you weren't here. But I can tell you that the level of presentation and transparency wasn't the same back then as we're trying to present today. I look at when we had the issue of repairing the South River Street Bridge, the outreach to residents, going door to door, public hearings, Bridge Lane. I think we have a different philosophy, and this council does. The presentations we're bringing by Honeywell, Woodard and Kern on the sewer usage, bringing the Housing Authority here, bringing the Health Department here. We're trying to get the information out. Unfortunately, because many of these projects are years old and now we have to really fish or cut bait, to delay them will jeopardize the funding. Joe had mentioned these earmarks, millions of dollars. Well, initially, when we're talking about Bridges to Nowhere, they were going to spend that earmark, and it was last Congressman Simmons, when they still had earmarks, got that almost $4 million. That's a lot of money back 10 years ago. Today, that's probably 7 or 8, to build a bridge over the tracks to do fishing for shad. People looked at it and said, we really don't have that many people to justify it. Can't we designate the money? I wasn't here again, but staff went, and we had to go to basically the congressional people and federal authorities. The plan now, as he said, entails going over the railroad tracks or going under them. Do you know why? Because DOT would only let us keep those funds if it connected almost directly to the Amtrak and a project therein. We could use that money in so many other ways around the town, and we can't do it because of the federal, as we've heard. When you get grant money, there are strings attached. Actually, it's not strings, it's ropes and chains is what's attached to a lot of this money. So I wish we could go back, but here we are. And these hard decisions have to be made, and I will work, and I pledge to work with Mr. Cocktail and those residents to do whatever we can to do this in an equitable fashion. I will say, we have shared this over the last year. When I found out Mr. Cocktail was going to be affected, I not only told him, I shared it with leadership, not always in caucuses or perhaps, the information is disseminated, but as Gina said, over the last several months, we've kept everybody apprised under my watch, and I pledge to continue to do that on projects going forward. So hopefully transparency and the light of day will shine upon these projects, and all the answers to the questions will be addressed at the inception, not when we're going to implement and people go, well, what about this or that? And really, we're under a time constraint, and we just really our hands are tied. So we'll work together and we'll work it out. ETV, I'd like to thank Walt. He's a gentleman. He's wonderful. He was a great volunteer for many years. When I was a young town attorney here, he was always a joy, always had a kind word, always happy and upbeat. And I can just tell you, not to get into it, you'll talk about it at deliberations, but we're committed to ETV. We're not curtailing it. It will be live. All of the programming that we currently have will continue. We also are updating it with HD. That had come forth, and that's in this year's budget to upgrade the service even further. There's actually an item on the agenda later in the program where we're going to address to do public service ads, and we're working with Cox Communication to use their studios at no cost to the town to do more of that and be able to go out into the community at no cost. Unfortunately, we have to make tough choices. Even 1 mil is too much. And look what I've had to cut. There are decisions that have to be made. There are equities that have to be looked at. What are your priorities? And that's just something we're trying to do and be realistic and to pay for some things that we absolutely need, other things that aren't as high a priority without diminishing the service completely. We have to do that. But that's up to the council ultimately. All I can do is be a good steward. I think, as Mr. Young said, I looked through the budget, directors. We went through it with a fine-tooth comb this year with Kasha, the assistant manager, who has her expertise from being in the budget office at the state, and that was her job. I think we did a good job scrutinizing. To that point, one of the questions or one of the comments was that the current salaries for the manager's office, and I'm not defensive about it. I'm not staying that long, so I'm not really going to get hot under the collar. But my salary is about the same as the last manager when you look at his benefits and mileage and family health and ICMA benefits, so it's about a wash. The JI did an exhaustive article showing salaries of managers in the state, Manchester and some others that are a little larger. They're in the 180, 88,000. They're almost 190, and they're going up. Because as we've said, there's a lack of managers in the state of Connecticut and in the country. In regard to the assistant manager, there's a big difference between an assistant manager and an assistant to the manager. The last manager, he was going to propose that. It's more like an executive assistant. We didn't implement that. I hired an assistant manager. It's important to know that Matt Copland, when he was manager, there were 2 assistant town managers. Both their salaries were more than Kasha's. And before that, we had an assistant for almost 25 years, and his salary was significantly higher. Why do we want an assistant town manager? Well, I think a lot of things slipped over the last couple of years. Things weren't being addressed. There were thoughts and ideas, but we weren't implementing what we should, and we weren't on top of things like we are today. I point to the initiatives we've done and the contributions Kasha is making, and I think it was an important thing that the council supported. I'll also tell you, as I said to you, I'm not staying for a long, long time. We need to have a transition. We need to have an assistant manager that in a couple of years, around then, or maybe longer, maybe sooner, depending on your wishes, that's able to step in and have the background. Because when you lose a manager, you lose a year or 2 of productivity. They don't even know where the town hall is for a year, and they don't even know who the players are for 2 years. So we're hopeful that if she's not ready at the time I leave, at least she'll be there to help and assist the new manager, which the last manager didn't have that luxury. He came in, he didn't have anybody to tell him, this is what the council initiative is, these are the priorities, this is who Mr. Cogtell is, he's a good guy, you can talk and trust him and know who the players are. So that's why we did it, and I think it was imperative that we invested in our future. I will just state to another point about salaries. The unions took a 0, 1029. We're working with a couple of others to do the same. And all of the non-union salaries, all of the people in the town that are non-union took a 0 last year as well. All right? In regard to safety, as Gina said, we take safety very, very seriously. I do. It's a top priority. And just I'll give you a couple of examples. We have a town safety committee made up of employees, mostly employees, some management. In most towns, they appoint a director to do that. I'm the chairman of that committee. And when I became manager, I've stayed chairman of that committee. We meet quarterly because I think it's the most important thing we can do is to send employees home safely. There's a free exchange of ideas. We implement safety concerns that they have. There's an executive safety committee. Again, the last manager, he didn't participate, nor the manager before. I'm the chairman of that. I go to every meeting. The council, we redirected money from an environmental health and safety position to full-time CEO, and also to another blight officer and to a safety officer. The safety officer started. She's been out to all of our divisions. She's been to all the departments. She's now conducting a safety survey with Kasha, who did that and had an expertise in Yukon to find out what our employees need and what they want. So safety is number 1. And I will point, we've had great results because our workman's compensation went through the roof. We had huge claims. We've worked diligently, and I don't want to jinx it, but we'll have a report coming up. We meet with our insurance carrier, the Travelers, and we talk about cases and losses, training that we can do. We do this on a quarterly basis, and we've brought our workman's compensation claims down a tremendous amount, in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is saving us money on our premium. But more importantly, we're having employees go home safely. And also, I know by doing our safety overview, we're making our buildings and our facilities safe for the public and people who come to visit and do business with us. So it is a top priority, and it is paying off.
This goes to the suggestion by the end of summer that we actually have one of the meetings to go over the insurance savings that
Yeah.
we've done, not only just workman's comp, but
Well,
also health insurance.
And to that point, we're going to have a special presentation because while the trend in the state and the nationally is escalating and spiraling, we've reduced ours individually. We have a wellness program that employees participate in. Our HSAs, you saw in the budget that we've actually had a reduction in costs. That's pretty amazing. So we are very attentive to these important issues. An issue I was going to talk tonight, I won't because we've talked about so much else, and Kasha was going to do a little presentation on it, but we wanted to talk again preemptively, proactively. We've talked about, and there was a plan put up when the school behind us was torn down, Higgins. The council wanted to be assured it wouldn't turn into a parking lot, that it would be an open space and a green space, and the former manager put together a plan for a Higgins Park. Preliminarily, we've had that drawn up because there's been improvements to St. Adalbert's. That developer there has a gymnasium and a theater that he wants to offer to the town, work in partnership. So we have a plan, and I want everybody to know so that we can start talking about it now. We'll bring the actual conceptual plan next time, but it calls for a park behind Town Hall, a walking track, exercise stations, a little shell for some entertainment, a dog park so that people can play their Frisbee. And, it's not love me, love my dog all the time. I have a lot of dogs, but some people, want to take a walk with their grandkids and they don't want a dog coming running up and jumping on them. So we're going to accommodate for both. I think it's part of the economic development that we're looking for, the platform for the train, redevelopment along the freshwater pond. So I want to say it now because it involves hopefully trying to acquire some parking for additional use. Lamagna Center, to be candid, and the Strand, it's going to be looked at in the study. Our vision is to move whatever we need. Lamagna Center, I think, is antiquated and doesn't adequately serve the needs that it was designed for or what we need today. We'd like to add on, perhaps, to the building and the gymnasium that's currently there with a new pool, because our pool is out of date and the cost of repairs is exorbitant. Bring it closer to town and have a town center. We have limited access. We just have the green here and the gazebo. This would be a real park, a real center for people in Enfield to come and to walk and to visit and to have all kinds of different activities. So we're rolling it out there so people can talk about it. We'll bring the conceptual plan next time. But it's part of our hope to be transparent and to talk about these things up front so people can ask questions and have input. I think that covers it.
I think so. My only question, you mentioned twice that you're not going to be here long. Is that a new negotiation tactic on your part?
No.
So Mr. Young talked about salary. Is that a negotiation standpoint?
No, I'm satisfied.
Sorry, Ed, go ahead.
Through the mayor to the town manager, I think if Donald could come up and, we didn't address Mr. Young's question about when St. James Avenue would be starting, and I can't give him the date because I'm not sure.
I don't know. That's up to the mayor. I don't know if you want to do it back and
Donald,
forth. We can get the answers, or
I'm fine if you
he's
want. If you have
prepared.
the answer, if you want to come up.
Because I know it's a mess.
And while you're at it, Ganny Terrace as well. Yeah.
Same problem.
Yeah. Sorry.
Or whenever they're all starting.
It's all the same project. What we're waiting for is a transfer for
It's talking about St. James right now.
St. James,
Go ahead,
yes.
yeah.
We're talking about it. We need a transfer to cover the cost before we can award the project, but everything's bid. We're ready to go. We're just a function of waiting for the transfers and everything.
Estimated time for Ed's point. I mean, not to hold you to it, but estimated time.
Within a month.
Okay. What about Ganny Terrace?
That's all part of the same.
Same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Answer your question.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other questions for the town manager? Moving on to the town attorney's report, item number 10.
Good evening, everyone. This Wednesday, May 8th, and Wednesday, the 22nd, our office is going to be having FOI training for the department heads and division managers, and they have been invited to include any of their line staff, since primarily the FOI requests do go to line staff. But we do this every couple of years, and we thought it would be beneficial to update and provide a refresher for staff. So it's this Wednesday, the 8th, and then in 2 weeks, the 22nd. And on the 22nd, I happen to be talking to Tom Hennig today, and he's going to join me for the training.
Very good. Any questions for the town attorney? Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Actually, I have an FOI question. We receive sometimes privileged information, and it's okay for the town manager to disseminate information to us. But it always bothers me when town councilors hit reply all and say, thank you for the information, that at that point, do we break the fact that that's not FOIable, and now all of a sudden it's a non-noticed meeting?
Yeah, I don't know that thank you does it, but we do caution against hitting reply all. It's not
Okay.
recommended.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item 11, any reports of special committees? Councilor Muller?
JFK building update, the construction manager at risk. The RFQ should be going out this week. We hope to have that out and on the street. The user group interviews were conducted on April 16th and 18th. And one of the big projects they're working on now is the HVAC and heating systems. The goal is to fast track and get rid of the temporary boilers as fast as we can. Thank you.
You guys are meeting every week, correct?
Yes.
Very good.
Every week and every other.
Yep. Any questions for Councilor Muller on JFK? Councilor Ongari?
I don't.
Oh, hold on one second. Councilor,
Yeah.
it's too slow. Go ahead.
No.
I just have one committee report. That's the Enfield Together Coalition. In their effort against the opioid crisis, they're getting all the church groups together, and tomorrow at 10 a.m., we're going to have a speaker at Calvary Presbyterian Church with a social hour preceding that at 9 a.m. And he's going to give a presentation that just to all the church leaders, and then in the fall, we're going to present it to the youth in town through all these churches. So everyone's invited to come. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Oh, can I say one thing? The speaker is Dr. Michael Ferris.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks.
Yeah, through the mayor, actually, it's a question for the committee. I wasn't at the last meeting. The PCB testing that is going on right now over at JFK. Yeah, both. Okay, I just, if there was an update on some of the readings. Okay, all right.
Do you have an answer or no?
I don't have one.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay. Deputy Mayor Suzak?
I guess facilities met, actually, they do the PCB readings, and Donald, I want to make sure I get it right, so do you want to come up here?
Yeah, I should have just asked Donald when he was up there.
Right, but that, I think we're still doing that through facilities for some.
To our meeting as
He did come, okay. I'd like to
Go
take it off my agenda if possible.
We had one hit at JFK, and I think it was room 22 in the Black Wing. We did some subsequent testing afterwards, and it came back non-detectable, so it's clean, and all the students are back in the room.
Thank you. Any questions for Donald?
Yeah, I do. Now, is this they still having quarterly testing through the end of the year, and then once the school year is done, that's going to be it? Is that, from my understanding?
We still will require quarterly testing, and that's why when I went to the building committee meeting after the Joint Facilities Committee, the DEP is looking for a full-blown schedule, a real tight timeline as to how long it's going to take to get the building in construction, because if it's going to be they haven't told me exactly if it's going to be like, say, a year or 2 years. They may just say, do the abatement now, we can't wait any longer, or if it's going to be in a reasonable amount of time, we'd be able to do it as we are constructing the building. So that's why I went to the meeting, and I've requested through the JFK Building Committee, whatever, to get a tight time frame so we can appease DEP and also EPA on that issue.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to...
I'll finish.
Go ahead.
We approved the drawings for the Phase 2 Henry Barnard School re-roofing, and those are being signed by all the appropriate, health department, building department. Our owner rep will take those around, and then that'll go out to bid to 3. He'll have to secure 3 bids from the state approved contractor site, and then we'll start moving forward on that.
Okay. Moving on to item 12, old business. On page 1, item A1, we have none. Item 2, do I have a motion to remove from the table? By Counselor Muller,
Second?
by Deputy Mayor Suzak. We are removing Area 25 Cable Television Advisory Committee vacancy. We are going to, and do I have a appointment? A nomination. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I'd like to nominate Walt Schirmer.
Second. A nomination of Mr. Shermer has been made by Deputy Mayor Suzak, seconded by Counselor Muller. Do I have a motion to close nominations? By Counselor Denny, seconded by Counselor Crisati. All those in favor of closing nominations, by show of hands. Opposed, abstentions, we have 10 in favor, 0 against. Now, on the main motion of the appointment, do we have any comments or concerns? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
Walt Schirmer.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller. 4. Counselor Sferrazza. 4. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Walt Schirmer.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco. 4. There's 10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
We move on to page 2. On the top, appointments 3 through 16, we have none. On page top, on the top of page 3, item 17, there's no appointment. Item B under old business, appointments by the town manager, 1 through 12, none. On the top of page 4, 13 and 14, appointments by the town manager, we have none. Item C under old business, appointments, P and Z Commission appointed, we have none. Item D, discussion of Nutmeg Solar, not ready to discuss, correct? Stays on the table? Correct. Item E, discussions, school roofs, that stays on as well. We move over to item 13, new business. No consent agenda. Appointments, item B, appointments by the town council. Item 1, Blight Review Committee, do we have a nomination? Counselor Sferrazza.
Jonathan Grozak, P-O-R-Z-A-C.
As spelled? Do I have a second? I mean,
Second.
That's pretty good. By Counselor Sakala. A motion to close nomination by Deputy Mayor Suzak. Seconded by Counselor Muller. All those in favor, close the nominations. Opposed? 10 in favor, 0 against. Now to the main motion as spelled. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Sferrazza. 4. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Jonathan Prozek.
Counselor
My neighbor. I'm just to be,
She's got to rub it in, right?
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco. 4. There's 10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Item 2, Blight Review Committee under new business. Do I have a nomination, please? Yes. Counselor Muller.
Jackie Bosco.
Nomination by Jackie Bosco, seconded by Deputy Mayor Suzak. Do I have a motion to close nominations? Motion by Deputy Mayor Suzak, seconded by Counselor Crisati. All those in favor of closing nominations by show of hands. Opposed? We have 10 in favor. Any discussion on the main motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
Jackie Bosco.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny. 4. Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Sferrazza. 4. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Jacqueline Bosco.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco. There's 9 in favor, 1 abstention, none against.
Wow, I thought he was going to vote no. Moving on to item 3 stays on the table. Item 4, do we?
An abstention is a no.
I got nothing. Item 4, Enfield Housing Authority. Do we have a nomination, please?
Nomination?
Councilor Denny.
Mark Zaccaro.
Seconded by Councilor Crisati. Do I have a motion to close nominations by Councilor Sferrazza, seconded by Councilor Keiner? All those in favor of closing nominations by show of hands? Those opposed, any discussion on the main motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
Mark Sakaro.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
Mark Zaccaro.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Sferrazza. 4. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Mark Sakaro.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
There's 10 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item C under new business, we have no town manager appointments. Item D, we have no council P&Z appointed, approved appointments. Item discussions, we have A, no consent agenda. Again, B, no appointments, town council appointed. C, under items for discussion, again, no town manager appointments. Item D, no P&Z commissions appointed, council approved. Items E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P have been moved to miscellaneous. Moving on to item 15 on the agenda, miscellaneous. Item E, discussion resolution under miscellaneous, request to transfer funds for information of technology, $30,000. Resolved that in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made. To informational technology of $30,000, from technology services and account, telephone account, from information technology from a salaries and benefits accounts of $10,000 and $20,000 for a total of $30,000. Certified that the above funds are certified and available of April 26, 2019 by John Wilcox, Director of Finance. By Councilor Muller. Second by Councilor Crisati. I know, Chris, just...
Briefly, it's an internal transfer with no impact to the budget, but during the pendency of when they had a network administrator vacancy, they needed to use outside services for network support and security auditing. So that was expended, and there was $5,000 in emergency telecom repairs. Paul Russell is here if you have any questions.
Any questions? I don't think we need to bring... Oh. Paul, if you want to come up? Thank you. Councilor Kiner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, I'm not opposed to this resolution, but just, I guess, in the name of transparency, we're transferring $30,000 from from salaries and benefits. Where did that money come from? Is it like an unfilled position?
It was. The network administrator position was open for half the year, and so that was the money that we used from that position.
So it's the other half of the year that's unfilled?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Paul? Thank you, sir. Roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala. 4. Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Kiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Barraza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco. 4. There's 10 in favor, none against. no
Moving on to
abstentions.
item F, resolution setting a public hearing to amend Chapter 34, Article 2, alarms of the Town Code. Whereas Chapter 34, Article 2 of the Town Code is the Alarm Systems Ordinance. And whereas Section 3431 fails to include third-party reported audible alarms associated with any residential commercial real estate, Section 34-33 contains some ambiguous language rendering proper enforcement unnecessarily challenging, and Section 3433 triggers the payments of a fine for a false alarm after 2 residential false alarms in a calendar year. Whereas the Enfield Town Council wishes to seek input on these amendments from the public. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town Council does hereby schedule a public hearing to be held on May 20th, 2019 at 6:50 in the Enfield Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, in order to allow interested citizens an opportunity to express their opinions regarding the amendment of Enfield Town Code, Chapter 34, Article 2, Alarm Systems. By Councilor Muller, second by Councilor Crisati. Chief, you want to come up? You've been sitting here, so I think...
Yes, the reason being, normally we just, for the setting of a public hearing, we don't have the presentation, but these are substantive changes to the ordinance, and I'm not going to say they're complex, but they're not minor. So we felt it appropriate for the chief to come and answer questions and explain it to make sure you wanted to go forward with the amendments before we set a public hearing.
All right.
Chief?
Wait, sir.
And this, I'll just say this went before the Public Safety Subcommittee, who endorsed it to come before you, and the chief is here. He was there as well and made a very cogent argument for them, but we wanted the whole council to have to listen to it before we set it for a public hearing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to join you. A recent audit of enforcement of violations of the town alarm ordinance indicated that there was some room for improvement, and those improvements were made internally within the agency. Having said that, this same audit caused a review in-house of the terms of the ordinance. There's some ambiguity there. There are some questions about the enforceability, and it's also written in a way I've been able to navigate through it. I'm sure with time we could all navigate through it, but I think we'd all want residents within the town to be able to look at it right away and understand what it is. We think we've made it easier to apply, easier to follow, and frankly kinder in terms of the circumstances under which an individual could possibly receive a town citation for a violation.
Any questions for the chief? Councilor Barraza.
Chief, Steve Hall is in charge of this for the department. Sorry. Steve Hall's in charge of this for the department.
Yes,
correct?
sir.
I know when I was there, it was a tremendous amount of work that Steve had to do with this, on top of everything else. Is he able to keep up with all these?
That is an issue. It is not solved by this. That's a manpower staffing issue that we're doing the best we can to work around. I thank you for acknowledging it. It is a concern.
I wonder if there's something that IT somehow could help with this somehow, because I just know how much time it used to take Steve to do this, and he had all these other duties, and the worst thing is not getting to him, and then the whole ordinance falls apart. So if there's something you think could help with Steve getting that work done, please let us know.
Thank you.
I just want to say, to the subcommittee that, again, we're not trying to penalize people who actually invest or spend money on having home alarms. Again, that's good stuff. This, I think, actually gives more leniency. I think we're at the 5th call. Faults would actually then start fining. Am I correct?
Correct. As it's written now, for commercial, it's a 0. There's no gimmies. For residential, the 3rd one is a fine. We're looking to put both of them at 4 freebies per year, if you will, and the 5th one is the fine thereafter. Because philosophically, we are wrestling with the issue that you've described. Folks are residents in the town, they're taxpayers in the town, and they've made responsible choices to install security systems to protect their property and to make all of us safer. To penalize them after a 3rd time, we thought it more appropriate to get to somewhere around the 5th.
Great. So I think in the subcommittee, that was an important point from you and your team.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you for hanging on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Sir. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Crissati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary. 4. Counselor Bosco.
4.
There's 10 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Item G under miscellaneous, resolution authorizing.
Mr. Mayor, let me interrupt. I don't want to take action on this. The town attorney informs me they have not seen the full contract, and they're looking at the resolution. We really would need Mr. Wilcox and Chief Aaron to be here. We had talked about enhanced sending letters for non-resident. This is going to an outside agency for collection up to a 1/3. That's not what we discussed, so they will have to look at this, and we'll revisit it next time. This isn't what it's taken months. I've been after them to do it, and now looking at this isn't what we discussed. So I'm not going to have you take action on it this evening. They can come to the next meeting and explain it.
All right. Item G remains on the table. Okay. Do we have to move it back to the table, Suzanne?
Just, no.
No, it's under miscellaneous. It's just,
Right.
okay, yep.
Just making sure.
Moving on to item H, resolution waiving bids for sludge disposal services. Whereas the Enfield WPCF generates approximately 5,460 tons of cake sludge each year. Whereas the town has utilized the Metropolitan District Commission, also known as MDC, for disposal of said sludge for at least the last 6 years. Whereas the MDC has provided reliable and efficient services, and whereas the MPCF has determined that there are no alternative nearby facilities with the capacity to process the town's cake sludge, and whereas MDC has offered a contract extension to the town on favorable terms, therefore be it resolved that in accordance with Chapter 5, Section 8, Paragraph D of the Enfield Town Charter, the Town Council does hereby determine that it is against the best interest of the town to require competitive bidding for sludge disposal services submitted on April 26, 2019 by the Department of Public Works. By Councilor Muller, seconded by Deputy Mayor Suzak. I don't know, do you want to bring Donald?
Well, Mr. Nunes is here. This is a very favorable agreement that MDC is entering into us. They had done it once before. This is an increasingly costly and prohibitive area. This is a very good agreement for the town. We've explained it. But if you have questions for Mr. Nunes, he's here to answer them.
And would like to speak, have Donald come up. Looks like you have to hook. Second period. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Crissati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco. 4. There's 10 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item I under miscellaneous, resolution authorizing the town manager enter an agreement with Green Law P.C. Resolved that the town manager, Christopher W. Bronson, is authorized to enter an agreement in the name and on behalf of the town of Enfield with Green Law P.C., subject to review and approval by the town attorney, submitted on April 11th, 2019 by the town attorney's office. By Counselor Muller, seconded by Counselor Crisati. I think we went over this in detail earlier, unless anyone has any questions. Roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
It's 10 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item J, resolution amending the facilities use policy for all town and Board of Education owned and controlled facilities. Whereas in 2008 committee comprised of the town council, the Board of Education, and staff of both organizations met over a series of months to create a workable policy for the use of town and BOE owned and controlled facilities, also known as facilities, with policy, which policy was adopted by Council Resolution 9942 on July 7, 2008, and by the BOE on July 8, 2008. Whereas though there were minor revisions in 2011 and earlier in 2019, since that time it's become apparent that such policy required careful review to ensure proper and consistent uses of rental fees for outdoor athletic fields and to provide compensation for expenses incurred to maintain and operate them. Whereas the Enfield Town Council wishes to presently revise this policy. Now therefore be resolved that the Enfield Town Council does hereby adopt the facilities use policy in accordance with the attached revisions submitted by the Town Manager's Office on April 24th, 2019. By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Crisati.
With Mr. Gar here and Mr. Nunes.
You guys want to go? All right, so he's not off the hook just yet. Sorry, I thought you were off the hook.
This is just to set the table. This is for an amendment to the facility use policy that previously the council had adopted. As with any new policy, there were some issues that came up. The subcommittee has met a couple of times, and we've worked out some amendments. I still think there are some questions about it. I will just be clear that there's been some talk, and I know some council people have said to me that, no other towns don't charge for these services. Well, that's not accurate. We have exempted what we called real bona fide town teams and school teams that have been existing and using the fields for decades. We, unlike every other town, we're not charging for-profit groups and non-residents. We have a list that Mr. Gar did looking at Bloomfield, East Hartford, East Windsor, Ellington, Farmington, Glastonbury, Granby, Madison, Southington, Manchester, Waterford, West Hartford. They all charge, and a lot of them charge more than we do, some are less, so we had tried to come in the middle on our rates, but we were the only ones not charging for these services, so I just want that to be clear.
Yeah, I agree. It was important that you guys submitted that, because we kept hearing we're the only town that was charging. So hopefully that be submitted into public record, please.
Yeah, we have copies of it. We'll put it on the website, and also I sent it to council again today.
So before we open up the questions, anything, Mark, because you guys have been sitting here all night, or Donald, anything you want to say before we get to any questions? Oh, good. Deputy Mayor Suzak, and then Councilor Sakala.
I guess I had a call from one of our citizens, and it said, the line here, athletic organizations exempt from rental fees listed above. We have to add the words, except where noted special fees for exempt teams. Because somebody's going to interpret that they're exempt from the fees, even though they're not exempt from the tournament fees. So I thought it was a really good point they made to me, so I wanted to share that.
So before that'll be amendment, if that's okay, we'll hold on for that for a second, if you guys want to maybe take a
moment and word it correctly. It's the athletic organizations exempt from the rental fees listed above. We want to say, except where noted that special fees, that a fee is there for the exempt team. I don't know how we want to say that.
I would just suggest that the town attorney opine, because they have been reviewing the language, so to do it on the fly like this, you may have a certain intent and it will end up being not what you intended.
Right.
With language like this, that's why every time you change or tweak it, it opens up more questions.
I think it's only the tournaments that we have a fee for our exempt organizations.
So Maria, we'll let you look at the Council Sakala.
Thank you. I actually I'm not following what you're saying, Donna, but that doesn't matter. So I had sent everybody up here what my opinion is on this. I think that I don't have a problem with this policy in general. I have a problem with what our fees are right now. I still think they're too high. I appreciate it being looked at again from the first time we did it, but I still think they're way too high. I actually have no issues with the tournament fees. I think they're fair. I think both exempt and non-exempt organizations should be paying for tournaments because everybody makes money. So I know the B&G guys work really hard. As an aside, thank you very much for all your hard work this weekend for opening days. My suggestion, if you go to the beginning, I guess, for ease of discussion, 293, line 293, my suggestion is it not be 75 per game, it should be 50 per game. Add another line and say $25 per practice, and then or a $400 per season fee, period, and take away for practices. It should not be both. And just for practices for a $400 fee is ridiculous. It should be a per-use fee or a season's fee. That is my opinion. I can offer an amendment to this. I will do it after everybody's discussed it. But sort of if we want to streamline it, nobody's going to argue with me, I can offer it now and we could just pass it.
Well, I'll give you the floor.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'll give you,
That's
and
all I
then
need.
Maria, I'll come back to you. Oh, 1 second, Councilor Bosco, then I'll come back to answer that question. Sorry, go ahead.
That is a max, them numbers for practice and play. So it's up to 400, max 400, the way I understood it when we did it. So practices and play would be 800. But the big thing with this is pretty much anyone that uses it that's a nonprofit, that is really Enfield residents, are pretty much all exempted. They pay nothing. We have some people using our fields for a business. And when someone uses our fields for a business, it's no different than you want to open up a law firm and go and calling Chris and saying, hey, I need a room down at Town Hall, and I'm going to put my law firm there, and I'm not going to pay you for it. So that was the main reason on a lot of these ones where you have these teams that they are charging. But when we were in committee, Mark, do you remember what we figured out was like $75 it cost us to stripe the fields? Do you remember what that number was?
The average cost, it's really difficult to figure out based upon shift differential. We got people working overtime, whatever it is, but our average is about $120 for that, for two of our staff to go out and stripe a field for that 1 hour. It costs us we pay out about $120 on average.
So, it's not cheap either. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that it's a lot more money than people think it costs to keep these fields and that doesn't count maintenance or anything else, which, that's our property, but we go above and beyond to make sure that these fields are prepped for these teams, and it does cost a lot of money.
Yes, that $120 I spoke of does cover staff, payroll, and also materials and supplies to do that mowing.
I used to do it in college when it wouldn't be straight though. I just have a comment. I'm okay with suggestions. I like the fact that you've added on the bottom. I mean, to be clear, if someone is willing, wants to write, or wants to seek an exemption, that you actually, I think this is pretty clear language. And and I know it's clear, but that we keep a copy. If someone comes in and gets an exception, that's great. They have 90% of their team live in Enfield. That we make sure we keep a copy of that. And I'm saying we're not going to, I know you don't go out and force check every kid where they live. That's not the point. But again, anytime in the public or even a private sector, when you attest to something, so someone, a coach, a parent, a mentor is saying, I'm attesting that even if it's just by listing, the addresses of their team, That's a public document, and that matters. That's all that really requires. And at some point, if we find out someone's lying, well, then we can, then we act accordingly. So again, it doesn't have to be where, right, your staff is going out and checking every time we grant an exception, hey, are you really sure you got 90% of the kids here? But you know what I mean? But if we find out that it's not that, or they're not a nonprofit, well, then we at least have a document to stand on, as opposed to someone calling saying, hey, you know what I mean? There's a paper trail, which I think is very important, in my opinion.
And I'll just add, Mr. Mayor, what we did is, it isn't going to be me unilaterally. It means if somebody wants to be added to the exempted list, they're not currently on it, they can file an application with me stating that 90% of the players on the roster are from the town,
Right.
that they are nonprofit. It will then go to the subcommittee to review it, and if they believe they're eligible and they should be included, then it would come before the entire council. We also added, because there were concerns that, this list should be something, it's perishable. A team may expire, a team may come next year. So each December of the year, we'll review this list again so we can make sure it's up to date. Because a lot of things we pass, as Donna brought to my attention, things go out, they go on a website, they're never taken down, they're never reviewed. We have things up from 2015, so we're talking tomorrow at my director's meeting about that, a little more regulation to take old and antiquated things down. So this is a safeguard in this one now, saying every December we'll look at it.
I commend you folks, Councilor Denny, Councilor Deputy Mayor Suzak, and Joey, Councilor Boss, for doing it, because I think it's important. This is, in my opinion, this is the most important improvement of this policy. Because again, it gives us, so it's not just, hey, I know somebody, and we're going to exempt that team. It's everyone's getting treated fairly, which I think is very important. I mean, from the comes of the fees, it's been a while since I've charged fees, so I'll defer to other council people. Maria, I don't know if you wanted to, real quick, answer.
I don't know that this is going to be helpful, because at this point, I'm disinclined to make a change. I don't understand exactly the point. The list at the beginning from 283 forward, just before the section that talks about those that are exempt, gives rental fees for outdoor athletic facilities, and then it gives what the fees are. Then it lists what organizations are exempt from those fees. So you'll need to straighten me out on what it is I'm missing, because I'm not following it.
I think what the citizen is upset at is you have the fees, and then you have tournaments, which is the only time our exempt organizations have a fee. Then we say the words, athletic organizations exempt from rental fees listed below. So we list them below, but they actually aren't exempt from all the fees, because they do have a fee for tournaments. I know we do, but when our citizens call us and I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying. We're saying they're exempt, but yet we give them a fee.
Yeah, I would suggest you not change it at this juncture.
Okay.
Only because the law of unintended consequences, we all know Mark understands what the concept is here to do it. And I think, again, if it becomes an issue or it is a problem, then we can submit it to the town attorney. They can review the language. Because when we do it sort of piecemeal and we haven't had the opportunity to really review it legally, like I say, we may have unintended consequences. So we like the input, but I think it's something we should leave it as is, just like we did with the blight. Let's give it a year, and then if we have issues that come up, we'll amend it.
Well, they can always go back to the minutes and know what the intent is, right?
Yeah, and Mark knows, and I think when the attorney says it's
We all know
clear.
what the intent is, but I'm trying to, when somebody points that out to me, you got to bring it up, and they do have a valid point.
Right, but I just say when a layperson wants to rewrite something, I know that they might, but when the lawyer says legally it's sufficient and we understand it, I just hate to do it here on the fly, Councilwoman, because I just think it may have other impacts. So why don't we take it under advisement and keep it as it is, and if it's an issue, we can address it, as Joey said, going forward. So thank you.
Now everybody knows, though, that there's
Right, right.
Anyone else have any, before I get to Councilor Sakala, anyone else have any questions? Councilor Sakala.
I actually just have one separate clarification. When it says per field per day, is the intent to say, for example, Powder Hollow has 2 fields? Is that 2 fields? Or is Powder Hollow considered 1 field for a tournament? Same thing with Eli Whitney, same thing with his Nuntuck. So it's a complex, but it's got more than 1 field. So if somebody's going to have a tournament, they're going to have a tournament on both fields in one complex. Are we charging per field or per complex?
Per field. This was discussed, and the committee and Mark felt it appropriate, that's why we didn't say complex, we said field.
Okay. All right. I mean, I would make an amendment to this, but
Anyone else have any comments?
I don't really see a problem with that. But the fees, I think we should keep them. Because I guess if you're having a tournament there, you're more or less covering the whole.
well, let me make
my
my amendment to the fees, and then you guys can either second it or not.
So any other further discussion? Go ahead, Councilor
Okay,
Scala.
so my amendment would be on line 293 to replace $50 per game instead of 75. Add $25 per practice. And then, or, on, I believe that's line 295? Or $400 per season and strike out everything after per season. And then the seasons are defined as below, and that's fine.
So amendment made by Councilor Sakala. Is there a second? I will second for discussion. I think it's a fair amendment.
Yeah.
So I would, you gentlemen like comment before the council? You don't have to, but just want to make sure you have a chance, you guys
I
put a lot of
wouldn't-
work into it?
This was discussed by the subcommittee. This was the recommendation that, we split the seasons, and they also then split practices to not include games. This is what the subcommittee wanted. Obviously, that's why we bring it to the whole council, so that you all can decide. But it really, wasn't a staff decision. That was the subcommittee, and it's for your consideration now if you think you want to reduce it by half, because basically now it's 400 for the games. The reason being, I think, is some teams come and practice, but they don't play games. And others
Right.
play games but don't practice, so they
Right.
just kept it separate.
Which was
But that-
why they have an or. So you have a per use fee in the 75 or the 50 and the 25, or you pay for the season, and that includes both your games and your practices. Because you're right, there are some teams who only practice here and they play games elsewhere, and vice versa. I don't think it should be a both.
Councilor Saraza, on the amendment.
Yeah, you said it cost us $125 to get the field ready for a game, to line the field?
For a game, we're getting, depending on the person, the people that are there, it's about $120.
So if our cost is $120, I wouldn't go along with charging less than what our just break-even number would be. So.
Anyone else like to comment on the amendment?
A comment. The original amount that was brought out by staff before was $50, and the subcommittee went up to $100. So the fact that now that you want it above what the original amount suggested by the department is ridiculous.
Anyone else have a comment on the amendment? There's been an amendment made second. Now, roll call on the amendment, right? All right, so a hand vote on just the amendment, not the entire policy. Those in favor of the amendment by a show of hands? Those opposed? 2 in favor, 8 against. You had your hand up, sorry. 3 in favor, 7 against. Amendment fails. Now the policy, as is. Any other further discussion? Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I think I'd like to leave the games at 75, but I think I want to have a maximum. If the maximum is 400 for practices, it should be 400 for games as well. I think that was something that we
You're going to
discussed.
charge $800 for people to play practices and games for a season?
No,
That's exactly what you're suggesting.
no, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm
you need to
suggesting
have a
that the
separate per
maximum
practice fee.
out-of-pocket for a team that plays and practices or just plays is $400, not a sum of the two.
Then you need to take out for practices.
Right, I think your amendment is that she's saying 400 per season, right?
Yes. And
Get rid of 4 practices, maximum of 2 practices a week. Is that correct?
Right, and
Yes.
if that's what you're suggesting, then you're no longer going to charge for practices individually. So if they want to practice once, you're going to charge them $400. That,
we
do you
didn't
see,
have-
do you see
wait a
my
second.
point on why there should be an or? They should have two options. I don't disagree with your point that they should have, like, the practice shouldn't be 400 and the game shouldn't be 400. But what you're suggesting is if they're now going to have one practice or 400 practices, they are charged $400 because you are not giving them an option for a per-use fee, which is what I just suggested.
That's the way I thought we wrote it, was for per-use fee.
Read it. That's not what it says.
Because that's how, when we did it,
Nope.
it was supposed to be, and to a maximum of.
Right.
You put a maximum of 2 practices, but you're doing 400 per season for practices, a maximum of 2 a week. So if I come along and say, I need practices for 2 weeks, I need to practice 3 times for 2 weeks, you're telling me I should pay you $400? What should I pay you then?
It was supposed to be so much, as far as I
Noth-
so much a practice.
Right.
And then-
Hey, look, what I just suggested and you all said no to, yeah, it would have been that.
Maybe I misunderstood what you were going at, because
Yeah.
the problem is when you do this so. When you work on this so much, I know what we
Right.
intended when it came there, and it was so much per, right. It was supposed to be so much per practice or game
Right.
to a maximum
Minimum
of.
of.
But you're supposed to have both of them. So if you're a team that was practicing and playing, then you had the double. If you were just practicing, you could get to a maximum of 400.
So how about I suggest again what I suggested, $50 per game and or $25 per practice, period. Or in big capital letters, $400 for a season and strike out practices.
It would be an and, not an or. First one.
No.
$50.
Oh, and,
Strike
yeah,
out the
right,
maximum.
but that's fine because some people don't do both.
Right, exactly. Right.
50
all
for
right.
game, 25 for
Right.
practice, or a $400 season. That's exactly what you said that you thought you did.
Right.
But that is not how it's written. But thank you for denying my
So,
amendment on that,
An amendment
though.
is resubmitted. Okay, you already read it, so I'm sure you're in good shape.
At this point, I need to withdraw my amendment first.
There's never a second, so you don't have to
Well,
withdraw.
okay.
There's never a second. So, okay, I'm sorry, let's make sure. Gina resubmitted her amendment.
Tournament fees below.
You're good on it?
I think they got it screwed up here.
All right, I will second it again.
It's supposed to be.
Again, do you gentlemen have anything to say before we open up for discussion? Want to make sure you have your,
Yeah, I think they should comment, because again, when you do it this way, I don't know what you've done. That's why in the subcommittees,
table
you
it?
think about it, and it isn't always, but I don't know. If you're going to, we'll get their opinion, but then I think the subcommittee isn't going to work. I think you better just have a special session with the whole council to work it out so everybody's on the same page when you amend it, because whatever you do in the subcommittee that comes back here, there's amendments being made to change it, and by the time we're done, I don't think anybody knows what you really did. But just on these amendments, Mark and Donald, if you're good with them, then fine.
I think DPW's concern with unlimited practices is that it's unlimited. By not having that disclaimer in there saying you can only get 2 practices per week, we could be, there's other folks who would, would love to take advantage of that, and would be here.
Right.
I think that's one of the primary concerns that we have right here.
Only thing I'm still a little bit confused on was I thought we were going to have, when we did it, if someone needed it just for a couple days, they were going to pay so much a day. Maximum of 400 for practices. Then if you were playing, you could pay so much, maximum of 400. So technically a team that was playing and practicing would have $800 fee. If you were just practicing, you would have a $400 fee maximum, or the other way. That's how I was interpreting what we were doing.
so Counselor Sferrazza and Counselor Sakala.
Unless I'm missing something, all the exempt organizations aren't going to pay anything.
Right.
Right? So all our town teams, our Little League, our softball, everything, they're not paying a penny for anything. So all we're talking about is some out-of-town team that may want to use the field for a day, right? Well, who would use it?
There are in-town private teams that would use these, as well as out-of-town leagues that probably have no business being on these fields that are using the fields.
Okay.
And to Joey's point, there's not enough fields to practice more than 2 weeks.
Right. But the problem is these teams, if they meet the requirement, they can just go down to the town manager's office and become exempt. So that's that, and they should, because if they're Enfield teams and it's not for profit, and again, if it's for profit, somebody could buy their own field and do it. I mean, when someone's making a profit on a team, that's why we charge what we charge for tournaments, because someone's making a profit. So when someone's making a profit, I say, pay. If someone's not, they just go right for the exemption.
So let's move this along. So amendment's been made, and I think your concern is that you'd like to leave a maximum of 2 practices per week, the parentheses. So on your or, if you took out just the word 4 practices and left the parentheses, I think that would
That would
satisfy their concerns as well. So let's do this really simple. I'm going to remove my second. You remove your amendment. Sure. So amendment has been moved. Now redo it, please, the way you did it, but just leave in maximum. Let's keep this very simple.
Okay. On line 293,
Yeah.
I would replace $50 per game. I'm sorry, I would replace $75 per game with $50 per game.
Yeah.
I would add $25 per practice. And then on the next line, I would add or $400 per season, strike out for practices, and then you can keep the maximum of 2 practices per week there if you want.
So I have a second. I will second that. I think that's exactly what you gentlemen said, and I think that captures what Counselor Sakala has been talking about, what you folks talk about. So any further discussion?
Yeah, what is the max someone's going to pay?
400.
Hey, that's not what we discussed, but put it out there and vote on it.
All right, so any other further discussion? Counselor Ferrazza.
How confident are you that it's this 120, you're saying it's $125 per game to line the field, correct?
We did a calculation, again, with salary, benefits, and material cost. It is $120.
Town pays $125. So if we were to charge
$120
$50, if we were to
on
charge
average.
$50, we're losing money.
In theory, we are losing $70 per game. But
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Okay, so I don't play baseball, so I'm going to ask a really stupid question. We send our crew out there, they prep the field for Saturday. How many games get played from one field prep?
On a Saturday?
Yeah, just,
Maybe 3. 3, maybe?
okay, but we don't
On a
send-
non-tournament?
We don't send people to prep in between the 3 games. Okay, so we're going to take Donald's $120 on a Saturday, and we're going to get 3 games out of 1 prep. So does that make sense?
Right, not always, but you can.
But
But
you
you don't
can.
always pay $120 either.
Right. But we so I'm trying to make sense of, personally,
If you're going to be playing 3 games in a day, you probably are going to be having a tournament.
well, I didn't think that 3, I live near the library. I hear baseball all day long on Saturday. Right, and that's not necessarily a tournament. It could be consecutive teams playing that are like, I don't know, I'm not familiar with it. Say the Little League plays and then somebody else that they're all teams that play consecutively, but it's not a tournament. So we would be paid for each game.
So any other further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment by show of hands? We have 4, and all those against? We have 6 against. Amendment fails. Now to the main motion. Goes back to the original amendment. Goes back to the original motion, to the original Schedule A. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
Against.
Counselor Crisati.
For.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary. 4. Counselor Bosco.
4.
Here's 9 in favor, 1 against, no abstentions.
You guys know you're going to have to amend it again eventually because you're now charging $400 for one practice.
Moving on to item K, resolution amending the Enfield Town Code, Chapter 46, Historic Preservation, Section 46-83. Whereas Section 46-83 of the Town Code governs historic district properties, and whereas the Town Council wished to amend Section 46-83, and whereas Connecticut General Statute Section 7-147CC allows the Town Council to amend the Historic District Ordinance with recommendation from the Historic Commission, and whereas the recommended amendment pertains to solar and renewable energy, whereas the Town Council held a public hearing in the Enfield Town Hall, Town Council Chambers on May 6, 2019, to allow public input on the recommended amendment. Now therefore be it resolved, the Enfield Town Council adopts the amendment to Chapter 46, Section 46-83 to the Town Code, prepared on May 2nd, 2019 by Development Services. By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Crisati. Any questions? We had the public hearing today and allows solar usage in historic district. Roll call, please.
Counselor Sakala.
I don't care.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Counselor Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
Against.
There is 8 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention.
Item L, resolution authorizing town manager to enter an agreement with CGI Communications, Inc. Resolved that the town manager, Christopher W. Bronson, is authorized to enter an agreement in a name and on behalf of the town of Enfield with CGI Communications, Inc., subject to review and approval by the town attorney, submitted on April 11th, 2019, by the town attorney's office. So moved by Councilor Muller, seconded by Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Yeah, it's getting late, and just briefly, Paul Russell, in looking at how we can expand, services and be doing public service announcements at no or low cost to us. This group had come forward. They've done it in other towns over a 2 or 3 year period. They will do public service announcements for us to put on our website, just with an acknowledgement and a link that they did it. We will control the content and what we want to choose. It's at no cost. We checked with Bloomfield, and I believe one other town, Kasha, was going to present on this, but she's ill. And it's good for the town. And again, we'll be able to highlight certain events in town if we want to do 4th of July, Mount Carmel, other highlights, and get them onto our town website at no cost. This is a good way to do it. Also, Paul, next, we'll be looking, as I said, they didn't want to present, but they did a really good job going out to Cox Cable, and they're going to let us use their studio with our volunteers to do further public service announcements at no cost so that we can put them on our website, too.
Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Item M, resolution regarding Enfield Teachers Association labor agreement. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town Council of the Town of Enfield hereby ratifies and accepts the labor agreement between the town's Board of Education and the Enfield Teachers Association for a period from July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2023, prepared on May 2nd, 2019 by the Town Manager's Office. By Councilor Muller.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Denny. This, other than that, the Board of Ed ratified the contract their last meeting, and this is a 3-year agreement, correct, Chris? 3-year agreement with the Enfield Teachers Association, and historically, sometimes it hasn't come to our agenda, but we wanted to make sure it was on our agenda, that we recognize that the teachers were the first group that gave us a 0 a year, and along with other unions within the school administration. And quite frankly, they've been doing a really good job, again, being a partner in this town. And I think we wanted to recognize and vote for their contract, which we think is a very fair one for the town of Enfield. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Again, we want to recognize that, again, the union has been a partner, and we appreciate it. Roll call, please.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Item N, resolution endorsing the preliminary design of the South River Street Bridge replacement. Whereas in the best interest of the town of Enfield, it is in the best interest of the town of Enfield to proceed with the preliminary design of the South River Street Bridge, and whereas the town held a public hearing on a subject project on April 17, 2019, as required by the Connecticut Department of Transportation, whereas the proposed design improvements enhance the safety of the traveling public in all modes, and whereas the preliminary design would remove existing road improvements from encroaching on a railroad right-of-way, and whereas these proposed improvements meet minimum town standards for road width and sidewalk access as defined in the Enfield subdivision regulations, whereas these proposed improvements comply with the town of Enfield complete streets policy core commitment, the Connecticut River Access Project, and coordinate with the plans for the future Thompsonville Transit Station, and whereas these proposed improvements will require the full acquisition of a property known as 5 Main Street and a portion of 2 South River Street to provide space for removing the roadway from the encroaching on railroad right-of-way, promote minimum town standard width for two-way access, and promote sidewalk access. Now therefore be it resolved that the town fully supports this project as designed and intends to proceed to final design of the South River Street Bridge replacement, including the addition of sidewalks and road improvements to South River Bridge in the intersection of Main Street. By Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Second.
Second by Councilor Crisati.
There was more to it.
No.
That's the next one.
So anyone else have any, I know most of you spoke, do your communications. I don't know if anyone else has any comments or questions. Again, the only thing I'll add, I mean, I didn't really speak because everyone else was. Again, this is one where I feel like I'm voting against friends because, again, I have a great deal of respect for Steve and Caroline and all the people down at South River Street. But I think, again, everyone spoke very well tonight as a council, and even folks who spoke before us from South River Street in that area, they were very respectful, very sincere. Unfortunately, these are some of the tough decisions that we really don't like to make, but have to make. So again, I want to commend the council as well for doing a very good job of speaking honestly and with what you believed. So a very tough situation, but I think you all handled yourself with some respect. So thank you. Roll call, please.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
With great reluctance, 4.
Counselor Kiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Item O, resolution endorsing the preliminary design of the Connecticut River Access State Project. Resolved that Town Manager Christopher W. Bronson is authorized to sign and submit the, sorry, wrong one. Sorry, Chris. Sorry about that, excuse me. Strike that. Whereas it is the best interest of the town of Enfield to proceed with the preliminary design of the Connecticut River Access Project. Whereas the town held a public hearing for the subject project on April 17, 2019, as required by the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Whereas the proposed design improvements enhance the safety for the traveling public in all modes by providing better access to the Connecticut River. And whereas the proposed improvements comply with the town of Enfield complete streets policy core commitment and coordinate with plans for the South River Street Bridge replacement project and the future Townsville Transit Station. And whereas these proposed improvements will require partial land acquisitions to provide space for walkway and footbridge, now therefore be it resolved, the town fully supports this project as designed and intends to proceed to final design of the Connecticut River Access Project submitted by our engineering department on May 2nd, 2019. By Councilor Muller.
Second.
By Deputy Mayor Suzak. Okay, any comments or concerns?
Yes.
Councilor Denny.
I just want to make a comment. A gentleman talked about the underpass. And do we know if there's any plans to ever fix that underpass, widen it, or do anything because of it? Because it's pretty narrow.
I believe with the long-term train station plan and potential double tracking, that is one of the improvements, and that's why it's so costly, because they've got to start a mile down the track to be able to raise it up over that intersection. But that is in the DOT plan for the future.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Kiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Srazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
There's 10 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Item P, resolution authorizing the town manager to sign grant applications submitted to the Capital Region Council of Government, also known as CROG, for the Town Farm Road Multi-Use Plan. Resolved that the town manager, Christopher W. Brownson, is authorized to sign and submit the grant applications in the name and on behalf of the town of Enfield with the Capital Region Council of Government submitted on May 2nd, 2019 by the town manager's office. By Councilor Muller.
Second.
By Councilor Denny. I know, Chris, I know, real quick, highlight, I don't know, Donald, if there's anything.
If you have any questions, Donald's here. If you have questions.
Any questions from anyone? This is simply to extend the current walking/road, bike path. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
That's the question everybody's been asking. Is it going to be separate like the other town farm multi-use path, or is it going to be integrated into the road like it was on South Road?
So this will be for the transportation set-aside grant that CROG has put out requesting for projects in a neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 million. So yes, it will be an extension of the current one that runs from Raffia Road to Abbey Road. It's going to be a separated multi-use path. It'll be 10 feet wide. It'll be just like the one that is there now that goes in front of the transfer station and the like. It'll continue all the way to Broadbrook.
And we have enough right-of-way to accommodate this?
Yes, during the Town Farm Road reconstruction right now, we have moved the road about 5 feet to the south of where its original location is to allot for that multi-use path to be to the north. So we're not taking any right-of-way, we're not taking any, there's no land takings involved. There may be some easements here and there, but it's not going to be land takings required for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Bosco, then Councilor Ungary.
I would love to say no to this. I fought the other bike path, but so many people use it. It's insane how many people, especially on a nice sunny day, use that path. So I would foresee the path getting used down on the other side. And the next good thing about it is there was supposed to be a sidewalk put in behind all the houses over there, Cornfield Road or whatever it is up in that area, and it never got built. And actually, there was a thing to put a sidewalk there at one time, and then it failed. So this will address a problem on that street because you just can't walk down there, and also gives the opportunity to people with the houses on Town Farm Road to have their kids get picked up on a safe spot with a bus. So I'll be supporting this, even though I'd love to say no.
I do think it's an important connection too now with Fletcher Road being completed, and we have share rows, share the road arrows from there. So if we're fortunate enough to get this grant, we'll have a connection from the town line all the way on Fletcher Road all the way to Route 5. That'll be one east-west basically connection across the town. So something else to think about.
Councilor Ungary.
Quick question, how long is that stretch? That's not a mile, is it?
It's 3,700 plus or minus feet. So.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilor
Thank you, Donald.
Yep.
Councilor Crissati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak. 4. Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco. 4. There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item 16, public communications. Would anyone like to speak for the council at this time? Walter.
It'll take up 2 hours.
You have 3 minutes.
Walter Cruzel, 21 Charlie Road, also Board of Ed Chairman. Thank you all for approving the teacher's contract. They came to us ahead of any negotiations, and we worked with them, and we got the contract done. And thank you for recognizing they were the first that came to us with 0, along with other teacher contracts that came to us with 0s. So we want to thank them. And also, let's remember that it's Teacher Appreciation Week, so appreciate the teachers. They do a lot of work for our kids in school and for the town. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak for the council at this time? Anyone else? Hearing none, I declare public communications closed. Moving on to item 17, council communications. Does anyone have anything to say at this point? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? By Counselor Sferrazzi, seconded by Counselor Denny. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 9 in favor, 0 against. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Sorry for the long meeting.